Chapter 1233. Seeing the primordial demon's devil path divine powers, the others didn't care. They just felt that the power was extraordinary, and the contempt they had for the poisonous scholar immediately vanished. Because of this divine ability, even the spectators, who were protected by the arena, and even those with low cultivation bases outside the arena, seemed to have been demonized just by looking at it. However, in the eyes of diabolical masters like Ro, it was as if the sun was shining brightly in the sky. The original demon was not simple. After the poison marquis and the others had lost 2 rounds in a row, how could the contestant sent to turn the tables be simple? This person was originally a direct disciple of one of the top forces in the Zone Mo chaotic world, ranked 120 in the infinite void. Due to some reasons, he had to leave his home and betray his sect. However, his talent and foundation couldn't be denied. After all, as a direct disciple of such a powerful force, soul-chasing and the poison scholar could not compare to him. Although he did not have the combat power to fight against the chaos like the disciples of the top 100 chaotic worlds, he was second only to them. According to the poison marquis speculation, as long as the original demon broke through to the primordial chaos, he would definitely be like Feng Shan, or even better than him. It was possible for him to break through to the second or even the third stage of the primordial chaos. Therefore, although Hao Qian was extraordinary, he did not let his guard down. However, his luck was really bad. Although he had become the Celestial Emperor by chance, he had been used as a pawn by Hong Jun and a puppet by San Qing. Later, because of the Hao Qian mirror, he had been targeted by Feng Shan. Now, he had met a top expert like the original demon. Really, this was fate. What more could he say? As Hao Qian's sword fell, the Zhodian star followed. Everything under the sky belonged to the emperor, and everyone under the emperor's command was the emperor's subordinate. Wherever the sword light reached, it would be the territory. His words would be the law, and it would be the golden rule. However, the domineering emperor's path Ziwei seemed to pale in comparison to the ancient demon soil that was expanding at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was being restrained bit by bit. The sword Dao was like a dragon, as if it wanted to overturn the seas and rivers, but the demonic light was like a dragon that restrained it. No matter how powerful it was like falling into a quagmire. The more it tumbled, the more it struggled, the deeper it sank. The black curtain rolled, wrapping around the sword light, suppressing it, but it couldn't affect it in the slightest. It was exceptionally terrifying. Damn it! Although Clear Sky did not underestimate the primal demon, he was not overly cautious either. He felt that if the Shura's sovereign, mysterious yellow, and the others could easily defeat the primal demon, then so could he. However, he didn't expect that he would encounter an original demon who was so powerful. He didn't have the time to think and immediately used his trump card. A sovereign throne hung high in the air. It was purple gold, magnificent and noble. There were 9 nine-clawed golden dragons around it. Of course, the 9-clawed golden dragons were not the ancestral dragon, but something similar to the artifact spirit of the Kongtong seal, or an image evolved from the human Tao. Clear Sky sat on it, wearing a dragon robe and a crown. The bead curtain covered his face, making it impossible to see his face. However, even if he didn't do anything, at this moment, he seemed to have returned to the cloudy palace of the Golden Arches. Even if a saint was here, he was confident that he could fight against them. Originally, the demonic aura swept out like an unstoppable force. In an instant, it was about to wrap Clear Sky in the black curtain and suppress and assimilate him. However, the sovereign throne suddenly released countless supreme and noble emperors' purple chi. It sprinkled down, forming an invisible barrier that blocked the demonic path divine ability that the original demon had cast. It couldn't penetrate at all. Moreover, the majesty of the Emperor's path could not tolerate foreign things. The Emperor's purple chi continued to crush the demonic aura, as if it wanted to kill the demon and purify the world, returning peace to the world. What a new Pangu chaotic world. It's really amazing. Yes, we don't have a primordial treasure, but these people who haven't even reached the origin realm have one. Sure enough, different people have different fates. It's just a waste of natural resources. Falling into their hands is like throwing pearls before swine. Seeing the sovereign throne in Clear Sky's hands, Desolation side didn't have much of a reaction. After all, in the Heavenly Roads opportunity, Clear Sky had already revealed this trump card. It was also because of this treasure that he could stand out among the many contestants. However, the Poison God Marquis's face was very ugly. First, it was the Shura Emperor, then the Black-Yellow Ancestor, and then Clear Sky. Everyone had a primordial treasure in their hands, and the others were no exception. Those who didn't know better would think that primordial treasures were cabbages. Although postnatal treasures might not be inferior to primordial treasures, in the end, the rarer something is, the more precious it is. Moreover, seeing that everyone under the Origin Realm had a primordial treasure, many people above the Origin Realm on the Poison God Marquis side didn't have a primordial treasure. How could they endure this? They didn't know that these 10 people were exceptions. Among the Saints and Origin Realm, except for Lousy and Primordial, the other 4 didn't have primordial treasures. Although the Immortal Execution Sword formation in Clear Sky's hands was sharp, it wasn't a primordial treasure, so it couldn't effectively suppress destiny. However, they wouldn't be able to see this. This was because Kundi, Jean, and Goddess Nviwa did not participate in the arena battle. Although Tong Tian had participated, the Immortal Slaying Sword formation in his hand was so powerful that he neglected that it was not a primordial supreme treasure. As for the World Tree clone, not to mention the other treasures, the World Tree itself was a primordial treasure. Hoodoo had the 6 paths of reincarnation golden plate. Lousy had 2, and Rose Ancient Demon Gate was even above the other primordial treasures. Although the Poison God Marquis and the others expressed some envy and jealousy, they did not sigh or feel dispirited. This was because the primordial demon was different from Soul Chasing and the Poison Scholar. His background determined that his trump cards would naturally be extraordinary. The primordial demon's expression didn't change at all when he saw that his magic had been resisted by the primordial treasure that Hao Ian had used. With a flip of his hand, he took out a scroll. Although he had yet to open it, everyone could already feel an extremely powerful pressure radiating from it. This was especially so for Luo Ho, who cultivated the demonic way. He could even sense the source power of the demonic way. Upon seeing this, Rose stood up immediately. Even the ancient demon gate in his body was shaking, so he couldn't help but feel shocked. If he hadn't known that this place was protected by the Equalization Great Tao, and if he hadn't known that the Poison Marquis and the others would definitely not have allowed him to bully the weak, Ro wanted to snatch it away immediately. Hao Ian was the first to bear the brunt. It was a coercion that surpassed the primordial chaos life level. It was like a real dragon suppressing a flood dragon. He felt a strong sense of threat. He didn't have much time to think. He could only use all his strength to activate the 9-9 Supreme Throne and try to break the Devil Chi barrier before the primordial demon opened the scroll. Chapter 1234. Magnificent Scene of the Heavens. For a moment, Hao Ian's body and the Throne of Supremacy fused into one, and his power erupted at full speed. Although Hao Ian himself looked gentle like jade, no one dared to get close to him. It was as if there was a pair of eyes watching them from the heavens and the earth. The surroundings were filled with strange phenomena. Stars lit up, manifesting an endless starry sky. The sun and moon were in his hands. Z-Wei was beneath his feet, and billions of stars revolved around him. The magnificent scene of the 33 heavens floated behind him. The palace of the golden arches enveloped him, and billions of gods worshipped him. Every breath he took was the birth and death of the world. The light of the world seemed to dim at this moment. This power seemed to have broken through the limits of a quasi-saint and a quasi-saint, as if it had broken through the barrier of primordial chaos. Unfortunately, the enemy was even stronger. The divine ability that the Origin Demon used was called the Abyss of Demon Domain, a direct divine ability of the primordial demon sect. This divine ability was a secret technique that led to the immortal realm or even the godly king realm. Not to mention the immortal realm or the godly king realm. Once it reached the primordial chaos level, this divine ability would definitely not be weaker than the mysterious yellow ancestor's mysterious yellow immortal body or the primordial lord of heaven's 10,000 golden lanterns. At this moment, although the cultivation of the origin demon hadn't reached the primordial chaos level, his talent and opportunities had reached the limit of the primordial chaos level. In terms of sealing power, even a connate cardinal treasure couldn't break through in an instant. As expected, the demonic earth that had been transformed by the demonic chi had formed a very resilient cage. It firmly imprisoned the 9 thrones of supremacy and Hao Tian within it. Although it expanded and shrank from time to time, no matter how it changed, it was always blocked by the light screen that the demonic chi had evolved. At the same time, Hao Ian's magic power and the power of the throne of supremacy were constantly being whittled away. However, if the origin demon didn't have any follow-up moves, Hao Ian might still have a chance if he was given some time. But had the origin demon run out of tricks? Or would he give Hao Ian the chance? That was obviously impossible. As Yuan Demon opened the scroll in his hand, a huge figure slowly materialized in midair. No one could clearly see the figure's appearance, not even Fang Qingshan, Yang Mei, and Hong Jun. He could only feel a dark, chaotic, ancient, lawless, and wanton aura emanating from his body. It was the purest, orthodox will that represented the root of the demonic path. This was the avatar of a giant of the diabolism, or even the first ancestor of the diabolism, the primordial sky demon. Of course, this primordial heaven demon was definitely not the real thing. If it had descended, the entire Pan-Gu chaos world would have been demonized in an instant. Not even the essence of the great Tao would be able to resist it. Moreover, if such an existence were to descend, the entire universe would be alarmed. After all, the primordial heaven demon was the first ancestor of the diabolism. His true cultivation was unknown, but he was at least an existence that surpassed god kings, god emperors, and even god emperors. It was even possible that he had transcended the chaos and entered the primordial chaos. The primordial heaven demon that was spread across the universe was merely the remnant will, mind, essence blood, and yuan qi of the original body. The scroll was a decree, or rather, a handwritten letter. It was written by an immortal realm expert, and it contained his comprehension of the diabolism and condensed into the primordial heaven demon. Although it wasn't an ultimate treasure, it was more valuable in the hands of a diabolism expert than an ultimate treasure. Didn't you see that Ro was already itching to make a move? However, it was unknown whether the scroll had always been like this when the origin demon obtained it, or whether it had been used too many times, or whether it had been eroded by the passage of time. It seemed to be severely damaged and broken, to the point that the primordial heaven demon was barely condensed. Back then, the reason why the origin demon broke out of the sect and left the great forces of that great world to wander into the void had a lot to do with this scroll. However, it was also because the power of this scroll had been reduced that the origin demon wouldn't be in trouble. Otherwise, a decree written by an immortal realm expert, who was comparable to the lifeless demon palace's palace master demon venerable extermination, could condense the primordial heaven demon form of the diabolism. Not to mention diabolism experts, even non-demon immortal realm experts would flock to it. Forget about breaking out of the sect and surviving. The moment the news was leaked would be the moment he lost his life. After all, not only could he comprehend by analogy, he could also use this scroll as a life-saving trump card. Even though the power of the scroll had been reduced, with his help, the origin demon's magical power had undergone a qualitative change. If it was originally a secret technique below primordial heaven, then it had instantly upgraded to primordial heaven magic. It was even better than the primordial lord of heaven's golden lanterns and the black-yellow ancestor's black-yellow immortal body. The magical power that had been shaken by Hao Ian's 9-9 supreme throne was now impregnable. Most importantly, The demonic will that belonged to the primordial sky demon was like water and air, constantly seeping towards Hao Ian and the 9-9 Supreme Throne. Damn it, damn it. He felt that the demonic will was actually depriving him of his control over the 9-9 Supreme Throne. It was even like a Buddhist sect constantly attacking his will, trying to enlighten him. Hao Ian's expression changed drastically. Although he was very unwilling, he knew that the only choice was to admit defeat. Otherwise, if the opponent took away the treasure or was enlightened, it would be a fatal blow to him. I admit defeat. Indecision would only lead to chaos. Although admitting defeat was a bit embarrassing, compared to being deprived of the treasure and being enlightened, the negative factors brought about by admitting defeat were still acceptable. After all, it wasn't that he was too weak, but that his opponent was too strong. I've finally won a round. If I lose again, this round will be over. So what if you have the treasure? You still lost. Therefore, these good things falling into their hands is a pure waste. Although Hao Yin admitted defeat and the primordial sky demon won the first round, everyone on the Poison Marquis side finally recovered a bit. Although the Desolation side felt that Hao Yin didn't live up to their expectations, they didn't blame him. After all, the magical power that the primordial sky demon had displayed was not something that could be dealt with easily. Not to mention the demonic scroll that he had taken out at the end. Under the Origin Realm, an ordinary late saves-to-be wouldn't be able to resist the suppression of that scroll. After Hao Ian and the primordial sky demon, the challenge tournament continued. On the Desolation side, Progenitor Chariot, Zhulong, Fuxi, Qiyu, Jiuqian, Hun Dun, Jin Yuanzi, and the others went up one after another. On the Poison Marquis side, he also sent out 7 quasi-sage experts to fight against them. Everyone had wins and losses, each using their own unique moves and techniques. They were evenly matched. Chapter 1235. Under the primordial chaos, under the 10 people, it was completed one after another. During this period, there was no longer an existence like the Poison Scholar. Everyone did their best to fight for the victory of the battle. As a result, the next few matches were very exciting, and everyone's eyes were filled with excitement. Regardless of whether they could understand it or not, they all felt that it was an eye-opener and benefited a lot. Those with low cultivation and bad luck could only watch the show. However, those with high cultivation and good luck could see the essence through the phenomenon and learn a lot of things from it. Combat experience, laws, spirit treasures, divine abilities, secret techniques, and so on. This could be considered as a layman watching the show, while an expert watching the ropes. On the side of Desolation, after experiencing the consecutive victories of the Sure Emperor and the Black-Yellow Ancestor, they lost 3 rounds in a row. Hao Ian was defeated by the original demon, and the Lady Mother of the Chariot and the Primal Chaos were also defeated. Just like Hao Ian, it was not that they were not strong, it was just that their luck was bad and their life was full of troubles. Their opponents were either too strong or suppressed them. If it was someone else, they might not have lost if they used the method of Tianji's horse race. Unfortunately, in the end, they did not know themselves and their enemies. They knew too little about the strength of the people on the side of the divine Poison Marquis. Therefore, they could only try their best to arrange for the strongest people to fight, and there was no such thing as Tianji's horse race. The opponent of the Lady Mother of the Chariot was a Buddhist expert. Although he could not compare to the original demon in terms of birth, his luck and aptitude were not the slightest bit inferior. He was just a rogue cultivator, and an ascetic one at that. However, his luck was relatively good. He did not know if it was because of the good luck of the heavens, or because he was like the great master Xiandu in Hongjun Tiandao. But when he was traveling around the world, he coincidentally obtained the legacy of an ancient almighty Buddha. Not only had his cultivation skyrocketed due to the wisdom imbuement, but he had also cultivated several Buddhist great divine powers and secret techniques. These were all mixed essence level secret techniques, just like the demonic realm abyss that the original demon had cast earlier and the heavenly lord of primordial beginnings' 10,000 golden lamps. At the same time, he also inherited 2 Buddhist treasures from a Buddha. One was the dancing treasure tree, which was equivalent to a chaotic spiritual root. It could not be compared to Yang Mei's hollow willow, but it was similar to the world tree avatar in Juni's body. A Buddha Sarira was left behind by that Buddha after he died. It was comparable to a connate paragon treasure. Its defense was unparalleled, and it was a great counter to demons. The other was the Buddha's Sarira, which was comparable to a primordial treasure with unparalleled defense. It was even more effective when facing demons. Of course, this kind of thing would not happen under normal circumstances. After all, Buddhist cultivators, especially ascetic monks, were very restrained. However, if they really did erupt, it would definitely be a moment of life and death. However, even if he did not use this trump card, relying on the dancing tree and the golden body relic, in addition to his own cultivation level and magical powers, was enough to give others a headache. God bye 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 bye. God the God by God by the other the gods the other. The other way. Even if she used all her skills, she could not do anything to him. She could only admit defeat. As for the chaos, it was basically the same. If he did not have the primordial treasure, the 3,000 deities and demons illustration, he would have been suppressed in all aspects. The chaos was one of the 4 evils of desolation. It was formed by the blood and flesh of the chaos demon god. It was created by the heaven and earth. It could be said to be blessed by nature. In fact, it was equivalent to a weaker version of the chaos demon god. As long as he successfully broke through to the origin, he could return to his ancestral bloodline and become a demon god. However, even so, he was born in desolation and not the chaos. He was not born at a good time and was naturally suppressed by Hongjun Tiandao. Green Dragon, White Tiger, and the others, who were also part of the 4 spirits of desolation, broke through to the sage realm because of the karma rank. But he was still in the sage realm. His opponent was also a ferocious beast, but it was a ferocious beast from the boundless void. It was easy to imagine the strength of a ferocious beast that could survive in the boundless void. However, like the ferocious beast of the chaos and the beast of desolation, their spiritual intelligence was not high. It was not easy for them to transform, and they could only rely on their talent. However, once they grew up, they would definitely be geniuses. The one in front of him was like this. He was considered to be very lucky. Back then, the lifeless demon palace slaughtered the immortal realm experts of dozens of worlds and attracted the pursuit of a divine king expert. However, he did not expect that the extermination demon venerable would find out about it in advance and change his position. This caused the extermination demon venerable to return empty-handed and feel a great loss of face. In his anger, the void within a radius of 1,000,000 miles suffered a great disaster. Everything, whether it was the lair of a lifeless palace, the void creatures nearby, or other things, were all smashed into ruins. This chaotic beast was in the vicinity and managed to escape death by sheer luck. Perhaps it was because it knew that wealth came from danger, or perhaps it was because it was the will of the heavens, but after the God King left, it entered the ruins and obtained some fortuitous encounters. From there, it gained sentience and improved by leaps and bounds. In the end, because of this karma, it joined the lifeless demon palace. Compared to the chaos, in terms of birth, bloodline, and intelligence, it was suppressed in all aspects. If it did not fail, who else would? After 5 battles, the offensive and defensive positions were different. The beast of desolation was at a disadvantage. This made those who thought that the lifeless demon palace, the poison god Marquis, and the others were only SOSO, and that Daozu was making a fuss over a minor issue finally understand that Daozu was still Daozu. His foresight was not something that ordinary people could compare to. The reason why they failed previously was because they met the wrong people. They could not unleash their full strength, or their opponents were too strong, just like Hao Ian and the others. Fortunately, they did not continue to lose the following battles. Qi Yu and Zhun Yuanzi's successive attacks immediately allowed the desolation side to regain the upper hand. Qi was born in the Wu people and inherited Pangu. It could be said that in the entire Wu people, other than Hudu, in terms of strength, Qi was the most respected. Even if the 12 Zhu Wu were to be resurrected, they might not dare to say that they were stronger than him. As for the treasures, even Hong Jun or Fang Qingshan did not dare to say that they could surpass the Wu people in terms of treasures in the entire desolation. In the past, because they did not have primordial spirits, there were very few spiritual treasures that they could use. But now it was different. Qiyu had a primordial spirit. In terms of physical defense, Qiyu, who had cultivated the Pangu real body technique to the peak of the 8th level, was only slightly inferior to the black-yellow ancestor's black-yellow immortal body. In addition, he had the Pangu axe, the Wu killing sword, which was not inferior to the heaven-opening 3 treasures, as well as the 12 divine spirits banners that could challenge those of a higher level than him. Basically, no one below the primordial chaos dared to say that they could defeat him. Therefore, his victory was within the realm of common sense. Chapter 1236. As for Xinyuanzi, he was not easy to deal with either. In the past, the reason why he appeared to be carefree was because he was a true cultivator. Some liked to be carefree and did not have much interest in fighting. What he liked the most was to absorb the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, absorb the essence of the sun and moon, roam the North Sea in the morning and Kangwu in the evening, find a few good friends, discuss the Tao, and taste fruits and tea. Xinyuanzi was smart and knew how to hide his strength. He knew that his strength was good, but the real situation was not as good. Most importantly, everyone below the sage was an ant. He did not have the Hongmeng immortal qi or a backer, so he could not deal with everything. Therefore, as long as it did not touch his bottom line, Xinyuanzi could tolerate it. In the journey to the West World, Monkey Sun had pushed this point to the ginseng fruit. Not only did he want Monkey Sun to heal the journey to the West Quartet, but he also wanted to become brothers with Monkey Sunday. Although there was no lack of scheming, one could see the whole picture. Of course, he was carefree, but he was not someone who could be bullied by others. In the original trajectory, Xinyuanzi did not hesitate to fight against the demon clan for Hongyun. When Hongyun stayed in the 5 Villages temple, the demon clan could not do anything to him and did not dare to act rashly. They could only wait until Hongyun could not sit still and left the Longevity Mountain. Then Tai, Dijun, Kuanpeng, and the Zhodian star formation all came out. This was one of the reasons. In ancient times, to make the Wu killing sword, the demon clan slaughtered humans. Xinyuanzi did not know if there was a trace of kindness in his heart, or if he understood a trace of heaven's mystery, or for some other reason. In order to protect the humans near the Longevity Mountain, Zhen Yuanzi even faced the Eastern Emperor Tai and the demon clan's heavenly cycle stellar formation directly. Relying on the Nether Earth scripture, he could not use the Earth element formation. Although he was at a disadvantage, he managed to survive. Apart from him, the East Emperor Tai and Kuanpeng of Penglai Island, who were against the demon clan, either surrendered or completely disintegrated. Even the Dragon clan, Phoenix clan, and other ancient clans had to avoid the demon clan. It could be said that apart from the sages and Wu people, Zhen Yuanzi was the only bigwig who fought the demon clan head-on and retreated unscathed. The reason he was able to be called the ancestor of the earthly immortals wasn't just because of the earthly book, it was also because of his strength. Given Xinyuanzi's strength, if not for his bad luck and his personality, it was not impossible for him to become the #1 expert below the sages like Dongwang Tai, let alone become the primordial chaos. That was when Xinyuanzi's cultivation had not reached the peak, and he had not shown his ultimate treasure. Therefore, those who knew him well weren't too surprised that he was able to win. Fushi, on the other hand, was defeated. It was a pity. In terms of cultivation and experience, Fushi was not inferior to Xinyuanzi. He had even successfully passed through the sorcerer and demon ordeal and reincarnated into the human tribe, becoming a human sovereign and cultivating again. He might even be superior to Xinyuanzi. In addition, Fushi's talent in the Tao of formations was also very outstanding. Apart from the deceased Dijun, only Tong Tian could be compared to him. Everyone was a little confused about Fushi's failure at first, but they understood after thinking about it. That was because his original advantage, the two trump cards, could not be used at all in the arena. In other words, they were directly cut in half. First, Fushi's advantage was the Tao of formations. This was indeed a peerless way to defeat the strong with the few in number and the weak. During the Battle of God's Investiture, the 10 heavenly lords of the Jie district, the 12 golden immortals of the clan of enlightenment, did not dare to act rashly with the help of the 10 ultimate arrays. Did they have to sacrifice human lives to break the arrays in the end? However, although the Tao of formations had advantages, its disadvantages were also quite obvious. To successfully set up a powerful and peerless array, one could not do it in a short time without array diagrams, array flags, array disks, and preparatory work. Although Fushi had a connate 8 trigrams diagram, which could be used to set up arrays, it was only a top-notch connate merit spiritual treasure after all. It had not become an ultimate treasure, so it was slightly weaker than the river diagram of the ancient book. Moreover, the most powerful array he could set up was only the connate 8 trigrams diagram. Although it was very compatible with the connate 8 trigrams diagram and was quite powerful, it was much weaker than the 3 ultimate arrays of the Desolation. If used to deal with ordinary opponents, it might be successful. However, when used in the arena to deal with the Masters of Infinite Void, it would be a little difficult. The most important thing was that the ultimate treasure in his hand was not directly destroyed, but its effect was cut in half. In the previous fight for the opportunity on the Heavenly Road, the reason why Fushi was able to make it to the last 10 was that, in addition to other factors, he had the Run Huang treasure, the Kongtong seal. However, his success was due to him, and his failure was also due to him. Although the Kongtong seal was good, it was only a top-notch connate spiritual treasure. Because it was a Run Huang treasure, it was comparable to a supreme treasure under the blessing of the human path fate. It was even better than ordinary supreme treasures, such as the connate 5 element flags, and even the 13 lotus platforms. However, once it could not be blessed by the human path fate, the situation would be very different. The difference between a treasure of fate and a connate treasure was like the difference between a sage and an origin. With the blessing of fate and the blessing of Hongjun Tiandao, it would naturally be successful within the corresponding range. However, once it exceeded this range, it would not be quickly beaten back to its original state, but it was true that its power would not be as strong as before. Of course, this referred to ordinary treasures of fate. Treasures like the celestial chessboard in Fang Qingshan's hands were another matter. In fact, it was reasonable to say that Fushi should not have been defeated. This was because he was now apprenticed to the Shura Emperor and was a disciple of the Blood Sea. With the heritage of the Blood Sea, it would be easy for them to help him. Did they not see that the Shura Emperor was given a 13 lotus, and the Black Tortoise was given a Black Tortoise 8 trigrams diagram? Even if it was borrowed, with the number of ultimate treasures in the Blood Sea, it would not be so easy for Fushi to be defeated even if he wanted to. It was just like when Qi Yu and Xin Yuan fought for the position of Renwang. Wasn't the Black Tortoise 8 trigrams diagram that the Shura Emperor had left for him in the end? It was a pity that Fang Qingshan had schemed to let the Shura Emperor accept Fushi as a disciple. On one hand, it was for merit fate, and on the other hand, it was to win Fushi over as an ally. However, although Fushi was no longer a Fushi of the Demon Clan, his heart had not completely fallen into the arms of the Blood Sea and the Shura clan. Just like when Qi Yu and Xin Yuan fought for the position of Renhuang, it was reasonable to say that he should have helped Qi Yu, but he did not. Even after Shino made a move, he just sat back and watched, not helping either side. Although Fang Qingshan and the Shura Emperor understood this, they could not accept it. At least, they would not consider it as a core consideration. Chapter 1237. Actually, Fang Qingshan's and Blood Sea's actions were very understandable. It was the same for any force or individual. After all, it was normal for them to repay the favor. The human heart was made of flesh, and feelings were mutual. It was not that there was no such thing as I'll still treat you like my first love, even if you torture me 1,000 times, but it was very rare. The fence-sitter's actions seemed to be smooth and slick, but it was the most undesirable and undesirable. Why were the disciples divided into outer, inner, and core disciples? A large part of the reason, apart from the allocation of resources, was the consideration of loyalty. As long as you made enough contributions to the sect and brought enough benefits, the sect would repay you with even more benefits. This kind of thing complemented each other. The sect nurtured you and naturally hoped that you would have loyalty to the sect. When the sect needed you, you would help without hesitation to protect the interests of the sect. If you couldn't do this, why would they nurture you? You weren't the only choice, and they weren't your parents. Even if they were your parents, they might not be wholeheartedly for you. Thus, the grass on top of the fence would be swayed by the wind. No one would treat him sincerely. Although Fushi wasn't a fence-sitter, just the fact that he sat and watched Shino help Xianyuan was enough to leave a knot in the hearts of the sea of blood lineage. Under such circumstances, Fang Qingshan had already done his best not to take back the Kongtong seal. It was also because of these reasons that Fang Qingshan didn't help Fushi condense the Khanate 8 trigrams into a Khanate cardinal treasure. He also didn't tell him that after the Kongtong seal left Desolation, it wouldn't return to its original form, but its power would be greatly reduced. Perhaps it was because the primordial Lord of Heaven had predicted that Daipamkara, Jansuin, and the others had ill intentions, so he treated them differently. The array Dao couldn't fully unleash its power, and the Kongtong seal's power was reduced by 40%. Although Fushi's cultivation level was high, he was experienced, and he didn't lack mystical abilities or secret techniques, but was his opponent weak? Therefore, Fushi's failure was destined long ago. After Fushi, there were 8 out of 10 battles under the primordial chaos stage. Both sides won 4 and lost 4, resulting in a draw. In the end, it all depended on Jiuqian and Torch Dragon. If they all won, then Untainted Land would win this round. If they all lost, then Untainted Land would completely lose this round. If one won and one lost, it would be a draw. The final result was the latter. Jiuqian was defeated and Zhulong was victorious. Desolation, Poison God Marquis, and the others fought to a draw in the round under primordial chaos. The 9 heavens had bad luck, and Torch Dragon had won a Pyrrhic victory. Both sides were unhappy with this outcome, but they could accept it. Naturally, they were unhappy because everyone wanted to win. After all, if they won a round first, the scales of victory would tilt in their favor, and the pressure would be much less. He could advance and retreat freely. If they failed, they would have to ensure at least 1 win and 1 draw. Only then would they not lose their position and suffer heavy losses. But what was acceptable was that at least he wasn't at a disadvantage. No one gained any advantage. Compared to losing this round, this result was obviously much better. However, the next 2 rounds were still going to be tough. If they wanted to win, they had to at least get a draw and a win. As for Hongjun, Poison God Marquis, and the others' plans and expectations, the crowd didn't know. They only knew that after 10 battles, everyone was completely engrossed. All sorts of treasures, secret techniques, and abilities were dazzling, and everyone benefited greatly. It was an eye-opener. After all, this was against the entire chaotic world. Most people had never seen such a scene. Although it wasn't as grand as the Cataclysm, in terms of excitement, even the Shaman and Demon Cataclysm couldn't compare. The Shaman and Demon races had the Zodion Star Array and the Great Heavenly Fiend Array, which could fight against Saints and Primordial Chaos. But these 20 people didn't necessarily have Primordial Chaos combat power, and there were a lot of them, or even more. For example, the Primordial Demon Scroll, which summoned the Primordial Sky Demon, Chio's Great Heavenly Fiend Array, and the Poison God Marquis Buddhist disciples, who had trump cards that could harm immortal experts. Clang, clang, clang. As the 10 battles of Primordial Chaos came to an end, everyone was still a little unsatisfied. However, at the same time, they were looking forward to the next battle between early-stage Primordial Chaos experts. After all, battles between Primordial Chaos experts weren't common, and they were different from the previous battles between primordial chaos experts. In the Desolation, due to the lofty status of saints and primordial chaos experts and their destructive power, even if there were battles, they would enter the chaos and ordinary people wouldn't be able to watch them. This time, in order to expand their influence and gather fame, to let more people watch the battles better, and to prevent some people from being unable to watch or even being attacked because of their low cultivation level, the arena would activate Guardian mode for the spectators so that they could gain more benefits. As for the crowd outside the arena, there was no need to worry. When have you ever seen someone hurt by watching a movie or TV show? Of course, there were also unexpected situations. For example, many people who had been attacked by the Great Tao previously were not because the arena was not strong enough, but because their cultivation level was too low. In addition, the scrolls that the original demon had taken out contained too powerful Great Tao. Even people from Hongjun would be deterred and could learn from them, let alone ordinary people. A series of bells rang out, and that familiar and imposing voice rang out once more. The world of the Desolation and the lifeless demon palace's poison god Marquis have started an arena battle. In the first round, 10 battles below primordial chaos experts have been fought to a draw. In the second round, 6 early-stage primordial chaos experts will be fought. The rules are the same as before. Contestants, please get ready. The battle will begin immediately. As soon as the Great Tao's voice fell, the bodies of the World Tree Avatar and a peak third-stage primordial chaos expert from the Poison God Marquis side naturally flew up from their seats and landed on the arena. Huh? A peak first-stage primordial chaos expert? Is there no one else from the Desolation world? I thought they just didn't have any Immortal Realm experts. I didn't expect that they wouldn't even have enough early-stage primordial chaos experts. It seems like we overestimated them. That's right. I was a little worried when I saw that they had many experts below primordial chaos and were able to fight us to a draw. Now, it seems that I can rest assured. Not bad, not bad. If they're all like this, we will definitely win this round. Upon seeing the World Tree Avatar's appearance, the Poison God Marquis side was stunned at first. Then, they heaved a sigh of relief. They had not expected that the Desolation world would send out Huan Yu, who was at the peak first-stage primordial chaos expert. Chapter 1238. Although the arena battles were very fair and would suppress the cultivations of the combatants to the same level, it was impossible for them to win. This was also the reason why the Poison God Marquis and the others dared to stay in the Desolation and challenge Hongjun. Otherwise, with Hongjun's cultivation base and trump cards, even if they had trump cards that could harm Immortal Realm experts, as long as Hongjun was willing to pay the price, they could make them suffer the consequences and be annihilated. However, because of the arena, they had the strength to fight. However, there were limits to the fairness of the arena. The so-called same realm didn't mean that it was the exact same realm. For example, when a 12th-stage primordial chaos cultivator fought with a first-stage primordial chaos cultivator, the 12th-stage primordial chaos cultivator would be suppressed, but he wouldn't be directly suppressed to the first level. He would only suppress his cultivation level to the peak of the third-stage primordial chaos cultivator. In other words, the arena could only suppress their cultivation levels to the same minor realm instead of the 12th primordial chaos minor realm. Therefore, when selecting participants, everyone would choose participants who were at the peak of this realm. For example, if the participants were below primordial chaos, everyone would choose participants who were at the secondary stage or paramount being. If the participants were at the early stage primordial chaos, everyone would choose experts who were at the peak of the third stage primordial chaos. After all, although cultivation was not the only factor in the measurement of combat power, it was still the most important factor. Other divine abilities, numinous treasures, mystic arts, bloodlines, and so on were all external things. Cultivation was the foundation. For example, the 3 Shao immortals relied on the 9 Bin's Yellow River array to kill the 12 golden immortals of Chan School. Even Randang and Luya fled. However, they could not withstand a single blow from the heavenly lord of primordial beginning. Then there was Kong Xian, under the golden chicken ridge. He was able to hold the pass against 10,000 enemies. In the end, even Junti's sage golden body could be taken away. But in the end, once Junti became serious, he would still become a prisoner. Therefore, cultivation was the most important, while other magical powers, secret techniques, and spirit treasures were all secondary. Only when the difference between the two parties was not too great would the factor of cultivation be suppressed to the minimum. That was why in Mount Shu, the disciples of the Amei sect could run amok for a while with the ancient treasures and spiritual treasures in their hands. Desolation's decision to send Huan Yu to battle was indeed unexpected for the god of poison Marquis and the others. They did not know what Hong Jun and the others were planning. He could only guess that Desolation's foundation was insufficient, or that the damage from the previous tribulation was too deep. As a result, he could not even pick out 6-peak third-stage primordial chaos experts. The poison god Marquis and the others had never thought that the World Tree clone could defeat a peak first-stage primordial chaos realm cultivator at the peak third-stage primordial chaos realm, or even at the mid-stage primordial chaos realm. After all, this kind of person would at least have the title of chaotic origin. In the great forces of the various heavens and realms, this kind of person could also be called a core disciple and would be heavily nurtured. For example, the poison god Marquis himself. Of course, this was because they did not know about the battle in the Purple Cloud Palace. Not only had the World Tree clone defeated a peak third-stage primordial chaos expert, but it had also been a piece of cake for Heavenly Venerate Yuanshi, who had a precious treasure. If they had known about this, they would have been worried about themselves. In fact, other than the saints and primordial chaos experts who had met in the Purple Cloud Palace, no one on Desolation's side knew about this, let alone the poison god Marquis and the others. Seeing that the World Tree clone had actually replaced Heavenly Venerate Yuanshi, Jieyin, Junti, Niuhua, and the others to battle, everyone was in an uproar and started discussing it. Who is this person? Why have I never seen or even heard of him? It's fine that I haven't seen or heard of him. Weren't Elder Jiuqian, Black-Yellow Elder, and the others very unfamiliar with him? That's different. Jiuqian and Black-Yellow haven't broken through to Primordial Chaos Saint, but this person has a Primordial Chaos cultivation level. The movement of breaking through to Primordial Chaos will shake the Desolation, but we didn't feel any movement at all. Logically speaking, that's the case. However, don't forget the sky-supporting Black Tortoise and the Blood Sea lineage. They all have ways to conceal their breakthroughs to Primordial Chaos. Could he be from the Blood Sea lineage? At the thought of this, everyone's voices could not help but tremble. After all, the Blood Sea lineage had a rather special position in the Desolation. It was the only force that could confront the Xian sect head-on without falling. The most important thing was not their strength, but their behavior. After all, if they angered them, even saints would be slaughtered. Actually, I don't really care about this. What I care about is how this person replaced Jieyin, Junti, Niuhua, and even Heavenly Venerate Yuanshi to fight in place of Desolation. That's right. Jieyin, Junti, and Niuhua are still fine, but Heavenly Venerate Yuanshi is one of the Pan Gu Sanqing. He even wields the first Khanate offensive cardinal treasure of Desolation, the Pan Gu Banner, one of the 3 treasures of opening the heavens. How can this person replace him? Everyone, don't be anxious. Let's just discuss and watch quietly. Since this person can fight in place of Desolation, and this battle is so crucial, he must have something extraordinary about him. That's reasonable. How would he dare to do something like that? You should know that if he loses, it will be a great loss to him as well. Jieyin, Junti, and Niuhua were still fine. Even without Huan Yu, they could not compete with Heavenly Venerate Yuanshi. Even Jieyin, who wanted to challenge him previously, did not have much of a chance of winning due to the cardinal treasure. At most, he had a 70% chance of winning. Therefore, they were very calm. But Heavenly Venerate Yuanshi was different. As a sage who cared about his reputation the most, the heavenly primogenitor's face was not only so gloomy, but it was also as if it was about to crack like a porcelain. After all, he was the great Pan Gu Sanqing, the self-proclaimed desolation. Other than Hong Jun and Laozi, even Tong Tian was often reprimanded by him. The Wu people, who were also part of the Pangu lineage, were a bunch of barbarians in his eyes. But now, he was replaced by a nobody. He almost spat out a mouthful of blood in his heart. In fact, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that this person did not use any background. Instead, he defeated him and snatched the right from his hands. He won so easily that he did not even have to use his cardinal treasure. How could the proud, heavenly venerate Yuan Shi accept this? Fortunately, other than the saints and primordial chaos, the others did not know that he had lost. Otherwise, heavenly venerate Yuan Shi would have collapsed on the spot. It did not matter what the divine poison marquis side or the desolation side thought. Hong Jun and the others, who knew the world tree's strength, were 100% confident in this battle. Chapter 1239. There were two reasons why they were certain that Huan Yu would win. Firstly, the strength of the world tree clone was too deceptive. Who would have thought that a mere first-stage primordial chaos Huan Yu would actually have the cultivation level of a primordial chaos cultivator? And it was even more powerful than ordinary titled primordial chaos experts. Just this alone was enough to catch the other party off guard. In a fight between experts, the deciding factor of victory or defeat could be a momentary underestimation. Furthermore, it was the true strength of the World Tree clone. In the end, strength was the foundation of everything. Although Huan Yu's cultivation level was only at the peak of the first stage primordial chaos realm, he had defeated Heavenly Venerate Primordial Chaos, who was at the peak of the third stage primordial chaos realm and possessed a priceless treasure. Moreover, even Ro, who controlled the ancient demon sect, secretly speculated about the strength of the World Tree's clone. Even if he was at the mid-stage primordial chaos realm or at the fourth stage primordial chaos realm, he might not be able to take him down, let alone be in the same realm as him. Even he was like this, let alone by Tong. After all, people like Fong Qingshan and the others were still in the minority. Although everyone knew that the person in the immeasurable void who had experienced 10 battles below primordial chaos wasn't simple, they wouldn't belittle themselves. Although they were not bad, he himself was not bad either. If even someone like Huan Yu couldn't win, then the untainted land would probably be done for this round. Why did Hong Jun send the World Tree clone in the first match? Just like when they sent the Shura Sovereign, they wanted to get off to a good start. For example, in the previous match, although the Shura Sovereign and Mysterious Yellow had gotten off to a good start, the Poison God Marquis and the others were able to turn the tables in the end. However, it was still good to have some psychological comfort. Sometimes, a hint in one's heart was very important. After all, they didn't understand Boundless Void to begin with. On the contrary, from all the information they had gathered, it seemed to be of a much higher level than Desolation. In such a stressful situation, if they lost a few matches in the beginning, it would be a fatal blow to the performance of the later contestants. I am Huan Yu. Regardless of what the audience thought, the two people in the arena repeated their familiar routine and went up to register. He wanted to make a name for himself after he won, gather the attention of the people, and fight for karmic luck. I'm Bai Tong. A man in a black robe on the other side also spat out a few words indifferently. This person looked very exquisite. His eyes were like bright stars, and his face was like jade. He even looked a bit flirtatious, especially his pair of eyes. They were so deep that they could cause people to be intoxicated and involuntarily fall into a dream. When Huan Yu thought of this person's name, he understood that this person must be very skilled in eye techniques. Even if it was not a trump card, it should be a normal technique. After all, his eyes were too eye-catching, and they weren't simple either. If he didn't make good use of them, it would simply be a reckless waste of God's gifts, and the heavens wouldn't tolerate it. I don't know how you managed to get a spot in the arena battle. Maybe there aren't many people in your desolation, or maybe you're pretty good in your desolation. After registering, It was unknown if it was because the cultivation level of the World Tree clone was too low, or if it was because he wanted to take the opportunity to suppress the other party's aura and belittle the standard of desolation. But Bai Tong did not make a move immediately. Instead, he said arrogantly, "But what I want to say is that this is not a place you should be in. If you know what's good for you, take the initiative to admit defeat. Otherwise, once we fight, you'll lose more, and your cultivation might even be unable to improve for a long time because of your heavy injuries." Is that so? Hearing Bai Tong's words, it was unknown if it was his personality, his good intentions, or if he had ulterior motives. The World Tree clone's expression was neither sad nor happy. He said calmly, "Perhaps you're right, but it's a taboo to be afraid before the battle. Moreover, if you have to retreat in a battle where your life is not in danger, then what's the point of cultivating? In the struggle for the great Tao, if you don't advance, you'll fall back." All right. Hearing this, the onlookers from Desolation cheered. Although they did not understand why the World Tree clone had won the slot for the arena battle and were also a little worried about his cultivation level, just his current performance made them heave a sigh of relief. No matter what opponent he was, they would talk about it after fighting. Since that's the case, then you can only blame your bad luck. Bai Tong sighed. With a turn of his eyes, his originally deep and abstruse eyes suddenly lit up with a myriad of colors, revealing a dreamlike multicolored light. There seemed to be rays of divine brilliance flickering in his eyes, alternating endlessly. Anyone who saw them would immediately feel as if they were in a dream. When his pupils were not moving, it was enough to make people fall into a trap if they were not careful. At this moment, even the onlookers with the protection of the arena were subconsciously confused, not to mention the World Tree clone, who was the first to bear the brunt. After everyone regained their senses, their hearts skipped a beat, and they were very worried for the World Tree clone. As expected, when they saw the performance of the World Tree clone, their hearts sank. However, at this moment, the World Tree clone was motionless, as if it had completely lost the ability to resist. In fact, although Bai Tong's eye technique was strange and unexpected, however, it was not that easy to make Huan Yu fall for it so easily. The reason why he was unable to resist in an instant was because he did not feel too much danger, and he wanted to experience it for himself to see if he could benefit from it. Therefore, the moment the gaze fell, the World Tree clone felt its entire body tremble. From the outside, it seemed to have become dumbfounded, motionless, as if it had fallen into some kind of illusion. At this moment, the World Tree clone seemed to have returned to Earth, obtained the chessboard of heavens, and seemed to have come to the immortal world again. It struggled, as if it had come to the heavenly dragon, Mount Shu, the three kingdoms, and other worlds. 100 lives reincarnation. At this moment, the World Tree clone had indeed fallen into Bai Tong's eye technique. Bai Tong was born with a pair of spiritual eyes, and his cultivation of eye techniques was unique. Just like Wu people, the people of the Azura clan were suitable for cultivation of the physical body. In addition, he had obtained some eye techniques that were very compatible with his spiritual eyes, and they were not inferior to the secret techniques of the primordial demon's abyss. These eye techniques were very strange. There were attack, defense, and support techniques, and there were many eye techniques that ordinary defensive spirit treasures could not defend against at all. There were only two ways to defend against them. One was to have a special treasure, magical power, and secret technique to guard the soul. The other way was to make your mind so strong that it could not be moved at all. Although the World Tree clone also had a treasure on him, it was obviously not a special defensive spirit treasure. Although there was a Hongjun Tianao magic tool, it was a bit of a waste to use it against Bai Tong. As for the mind, although it was strong, it was not to the point where it could not be shaken. Chapter 1240. At the end of the day, Huan Yu's cultivation level was still a little weak. He was strong in all aspects and strong in that he had no flaws. This did not mean that he was unique and outstanding in the aspect of the mind. This was referring to Bai Tong. After all, Bai Tong himself was not simple. He was born with divine eyes. This was a gift in the aspect of the mind. He cultivated an exceptional eye technique, and some eye techniques were specialized in enhancing the mind. Therefore, the strength of his mind was probably not below that of some fourth-stage primordial chaos essence. Compared to him, Huan Yu was probably slightly inferior. However, although Huan Yu had been intimidated by Bai Tong's mind and had fallen into the opponent's attack, he did not panic. Firstly, panicking was useless. The more the situation was like this, the calmer he needed to be. Only then could he find the most effective solution in the shortest time possible. Panicking suddenly would only make things more difficult to control. Secondly, and most importantly, given his strength, he could directly use force to break this eye technique. This kind of attack had no effect on him at all. If there had been danger, the World Tree clone would not have been so careless. After all, a gentleman would not stand under a collapsing wall. It was because he had absolute confidence that he could walk so leisurely. The reason why he did not resist now and instead pretended to be immersed in it was because he saw a hint of reference in Bai Tong's eye technique. 100 reincarnations. On the surface, it seemed to be an illusion that affected the demons in one's heart and evolved into all kinds of strange things. It caused one to be unable to extricate oneself or to be agitated by one's inner demons, triggering karma, and so on. However, on a deeper level, this remarkable secret technique also involved the reincarnation law and the karma law. Thousands of reincarnations and billions of karma. For the World Tree clone, although he could challenge someone of a higher level and was comparable to a titled primordial chaos, once he entered the primordial chaos, it was really too slow. To be honest, it was too slow for his cultivation level to improve further. After all, other people cultivated one law, or a few laws at most, but he needed to cultivate dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of laws. Moreover, he could not be like others, who could only focus on many things and only dabble in it. The laws he cultivated needed to reach at least a certain level. Therefore, he didn't give up every chance he had to improve. Moreover, the reincarnation law in this pupil technique was not only useful to him, but it was also useful to his original body. After all, his main body was currently cultivating the law of reincarnation. Although he had the top-notch Khanate cardinal treasure, the reincarnation mirror had comprehended the 6 paths of reincarnation in the desolation, and had even borrowed the 6 paths of reincarnation golden disc, and the World Tree clone had also evolved the law of reincarnation when he opened up the inner world of the desolation. It was precisely because of these various reasons that the main body quickly caught up after focusing on the transmigration law. Although it wasn't as thorough as the law of the 5 elements, it had a certain level of attainment. However, these laws of reincarnation were all desolation. They had evolved within Pan, Gu's chaos world. On the other hand, Bai Tong's samsara law had merged with the changes of the samsara law in the boundless void. Although the great Daos were different paths leading to the same destination, in the process of evolution, there would be 1,000 hamlets for every 1,000 readers. For example, the 18 dragon subduing palms was completely different in the hands of Qiao Feng, Hong Qigong, Guijing, Song Qing Shu, and the others. In the hands of Qiao Feng, the 18 dragon subduing palms became more and more powerful. The dragon fought in the wild, and its blood was yellow. In the hands of Hong Qigong, it was a proud dragon with regrets, but in the hands of Guijing, it was a clever but clumsy technique. As for Song Qingshu, it was a waste of this exceptional martial arts technique. Therefore, the various laws contained in Bai Tong's pupil technique were very useful for the World Tree clone and Fang Qingshan to learn from. It seems that Bai Tong's pupil technique has improved significantly again. The opponent was drawn in without any resistance. This battle is a sure thing. Not bad, not bad. It's fine if one is prepared for the pupil technique. Once one is drawn in, the effort it takes to break free will increase exponentially. From the small to the big, so on and so forth. It seems that our chances of winning this battle at the early stage primordial chaos have increased greatly. Seeing that the World Tree clone had been hit by Bai Tong's move, the Poison God Marquis and the others felt relieved. Only then did the Poison God Marquis and the others relax. They felt that victory was in sight. Previously, they might have been a little worried that the Desolation side would play some tricks. Now, even if they had, it was too late. They had never thought that this was the World Tree clone's plan to beat them at their own game, wanting to use the stones of others to attack the Jade. After all, this was an arena competition, and it was not an ordinary arena competition. Once they lost, they would have to pay a huge price, and it would affect the overall situation. Ordinary people did not have such a big heart. Most importantly, even if ordinary people fought with others, it would not be that easy to comprehend by analogy unless it was a life-and-death battle when their potential was completely stimulated. Furthermore, the strength of the World Tree clone was too deceptive. Furthermore, just like Hong Jun and the others were very confident in Huan Yu's strength, the Poison God Marquis and the others were also more confident in Bai Tong. His eye technique was indeed a little strange. Even Madame Baiwa, the woodcutter, the gardener, and the others had not dared to easily fall in his eye technique, let alone those with weaker cultivation levels. Even if they could break free in the end, they would have to pay a lot of effort. Who would be so strenuous and unrewarding? What's going on? It can't be that bad, right? Is he going to be defeated like the Poison Scholar? That should be impossible. He's a primordial chaos expert, after all. Why not? Didn't you see that he was hit as soon as he entered the arena? His cultivation level is also weaker than his opponents. Can he still turn the tables in such a situation? The eunuch was anxious even though the emperor was not. Although Hong Jun and the others were a little surprised that the World Tree clone had been hit immediately and had not resisted, they still had some understanding of his strength and were not as worried as the others. Even Primordial Beginning, who had been defeated by Huan Yu, did not think that he would be defeated so easily, regardless of whether it was because of his understanding of his strength or because of his own pride. If that was the case, how could he, who had been defeated by Huan Yu, continue living? They were very calm, but the spectators who did not know the truth of the Desolation could not help but be a little worried. Although this battle did not seem to have much to do with them, they still hoped that the World Tree clone would win because they were from their hometown. Regardless of what the others guessed, there were two people in the arena. One was attacking wantonly, while the other was immersed in comprehension apart from basic defense. If not for the fact that this was an arena battle, it would have been a good place to sit and discuss. Time passed bit by bit, and the situation in the arena did not seem to change at all. However, the mentality of the onlookers had changed subtly. The situation did not seem to be happening as they had expected, regardless of whether they were determined to win or worried. Chapter 1241. Onlookers see more clearly than those involved. Although he was the person involved, he was not the first to discover the problem with the World Tree avatar. In the beginning, although Huan Yu's cultivation level was relatively low and seemed to be far inferior to his own, Bai Tong was still somewhat vigilant. After all, they were void bandits, so they paid great attention to caution. After all, this was a matter of life and death. Moreover, the world was so big that there had never been a lack of people who wanted to pretend to be weak to eat tigers. Although the Dao Arena excluded him, no one knew if he had any secret treasures on him that could conceal his cultivation level. After all, the Dao Arena only suppressed the cultivation level of both parties to the early stage primordial chaos. As for whether one was at the third stage or first stage primordial chaos, it had nothing to do with him. Therefore, when Bai Tong had spoken to the World Tree avatar previously, he had acted a little arrogant. However, that was just a facade. It was just a preliminary test and a smokescreen. However, after the World Tree avatar had been hit, Bai Tong's hanging heart immediately relaxed. He did not believe that Huan Yu would still be able to fight back after being hit. After Huan Yu had been hit, he had clearly sensed that his strength was indeed only at the first stage primordial chaos and not concealed by any secret techniques or secret treasures. Furthermore, if one was not on guard immediately and was hit by his technique, or if one did not break free immediately, even a mid-stage primordial chaos expert would not be able to escape unscathed without paying a certain price, let alone someone with a weaker cultivation level. It was precisely because of these reasons that Baitong was at least in a relaxed state, even if he did not feel that everything was fine. However, as time passed, Baitong finally began to discover that something seemed to be wrong. Under normal circumstances, after being hit by his eye technique, one's mind would quickly be injured. Even if one had a strong mind, a cardinal treasure, and a secret technique, one would not be able to hold on for long. After all, if these were useful, he would not have been caught off guard in the beginning. Furthermore, even if these things were useful, they would at least cause some movement if thrown into the water. However, they did not. Huan Yu was like an abyss, a black hole, and an ultimate ruin. Any attack that landed on him was like a clay ox entering the sea, disappearing without a trace. However, he did not counterattack and only passively endured it. It was precisely because of this that Baitong had not attracted enough attention in the beginning. But once suspicions arose, everything would be different. All the signs indicated that he had been tricked. Even if he hadn't been tricked, at least his attacks hadn't done anything to the other party. After all, he had been struck without a sound, and yet he had not reacted at all. More importantly, he had endured until now without any signs of injury. This strange behavior was obviously very abnormal, and it made Baitong's heart skip a beat. Stone Eye, transform. There was no time to think. Seeing that the 100 Lives reincarnation technique did not seem to be able to do anything to the World Tree clone, 100 Eyes immediately changed its strategy. Since the 100 reincarnations couldn't do anything to him, it meant that his mind was very strong when it came to resisting illusions. Poverty leads to change, and change leads to a solution. He did not believe that the World Tree clone was very powerful in all aspects. Even now, although Baitong was already suspicious of Huan Yu, he still didn't think that he was stronger than him. He only thought that he had a strong resistance to the 100 Lives reincarnation and illusions. He was called Baitong not because of his 100 reincarnations, but because he was proficient in many eye techniques. Although he didn't have 100, he had at least dozens of them. Moreover, many of them were not weaker than the 100 Lives reincarnation, and they were even better. This was also because he was born with divine eyes, and he was blessed in the cultivation of eye techniques. Other people needed a year to cultivate an eye technique, but he only needed a month or even less, and his power was greater than others. It was precisely because of this that he made a name for himself. Otherwise, if it were an ordinary person, it would be fine to cultivate one or two, and it could still be possible to cultivate more than a dozen through various methods. Sacrificing the rest of the time would not be unfortunate, but dozens or hundreds of them were really a bit of a fantasy. Putting these aside, the Stone Eye was one of the nearly 100 eye techniques that Baitong had transformed into. Although the name was not impressive, the power of this magical power was not small. It was a secret of the Stone Clan. There were tens of thousands of clans in the Desolation, and there were also tens of thousands of clans in the Boundless Void. Those who could be ranked were at least outstanding in a certain aspect, and they stood out from the crowd. The Stone Clan was one of them, and the Stone Eye was the symbol of their reputation in the world. This magical power was absolutely domineering, and it could directly and permanently petrify people. The flesh, primordial spirit, spirit treasures, and secret techniques would all be completely turned into stone. Unfortunately, it was still useless because the World Tree clone walked the World Tao, and the 3,000 great Taos could all be used by it. He also had some understanding of the Stone Rule, and to be more specific, it was just a variant of the Earth Rule. And Fong Qingshan had used the Tao of the 5 elements to prove the mixed essence. Huan Yu was his clone, and their comprehension could be shared. Although it could not completely reach the level of the original body, it was at least 70%. In this way, it was more than enough to use the 5 elements to restrain the Stone Rule. Not only was he not petrified, but he also comprehended a little bit of the Stone Rule. Damn it. At this moment, if Baitong still did not know what was going on, then he was really stupid. He understood that he had been played by the other party. In a fit of anger, Baitong used all the eye techniques he knew, whether they were powerful or ordinary, offensive or auxiliary. He did not believe that all his eye techniques were useless against the other party. Light of annihilation. The first eye technique he used was one of the top 3 eye techniques for individual soldiers, the Eye of Annihilation. However, a dazzling green rainbow light with countless particles of sharp light pierced through the sky and landed in front of the World Tree clone. However, it was firmly blocked by a barrier of mountains, rivers, and everything. World Guardian. This was a peerless magic power that was no weaker than heaven's like a knife, especially in the hands of a person who cultivated the world Tao. It was like adding wings to a tiger. Back then, when Hong Jun and Yang Mei fought, they used this magic power. Light of extreme freezing. After the light of annihilation, the light of extreme freezing fell right after. This was another divine eye technique that was not weaker than the Eye of Annihilation. However, a cold and transparent ray of light, like a huge ice pillar, hit the World Tree clone. However, it was still useless. Whether it was the mental attraction of the 100 Lives reincarnation, the attack on the primordial spirit, the petrification of the stone eye, the powerful attack of the light of annihilation, or the ice of the light of extreme freezing, they did not cause much damage to Huan Yu, who had the World Guardian great magic power. Chapter 1242. World Guardian. In terms of defense, this magical power far surpassed the 10,000 golden lamps and the mysterious yellow, indestructible body. It might not be comparable to the 24-tier red lotus of fire, but it was at least not weaker than the cauldron of heaven and earth. In order to break this divine ability, one would need to at least break through the desolation heaven and earth, push down the desolation heavenly pillar, shatter a part of the desolation earth, and overturn the 4 seas and 3 rivers. Only then would one be able to shake this divine ability. Otherwise, with the recovery ability of the desolation heaven and earth, it would be like scratching an itch through one's boot. If it wasn't for the fact that Huan Yu's inner world had just been successfully established, and it was only a world that had just entered desolation. Relying on this divine ability, even if he stood there motionlessly, no one would be able to hurt him no matter how you attacked. After all, generally speaking, a person was too small compared to the world. Although primordial chaos sages' fights in the desolation caused great damage to heaven and earth, that was only because they were inside. If they were outside the world barrier, even a late-stage primordial chaos expert or a peak primordial chaos expert would not be able to achieve anything even without Hongjun Tiandao presiding over the attack, just by relying on the world's instinct alone, let alone early-stage primordial chaos experts. Although Bai Tong wasn't an ordinary person, Huan Yu's world wasn't an ordinary world either. Therefore, whether it was the eyes of reincarnation, the eyes of stone, the eyes of destruction, or the eyes of glacial frost, all sorts of eye techniques with different effects landed on the barrier. Even though the mountains crumbled and the sea cracked, all they did was create giant waves that were tens of thousands of meters tall. They were far from tearing the barrier apart. Good. I want to see if you're really invincible. Bai Tong felt like a clown when he saw that he had used all his means, but still couldn't shake the other party in the slightest. At first, she didn't want to shave, neglect, and carelessness, but at this moment, all of it had turned into embarrassment and anger. He felt like he was being played like a monkey. This was because Bai Tong did not know that the World Tree clone was using him to comprehend the Great Tao. Otherwise, he would probably be so angry that he would vomit blood and die. However, in the end, he did not despair. Even though his close to 100 eye techniques had failed, he still had a trump card up his sleeve. He was extremely confident in this trump card. As for the fact that trump cards were useless, Bai Tong had never thought about this. Even if he had thought about it, it was only a fleeting thought. At this point, he could only hope that his trump card was still useful. Otherwise, Bai Tong took a deep breath and directly brought out his trump card. In a flash, a pupil larger than the sun or the moon rose above Bai Tong's head, covering the sun and the sky. However, it did not emit endless light like the sun or the moon. Instead, it was like an abyss, a black hole, or ruin. It swallowed all the light, and the entire world darkened. What kind of pupils were those? They were pitch black, as if they were blind. There was no color at all, and within them was a deep darkness. There was a bottomless vortex, as if it was connected to an endless world of death. The Eye of Death. This was a supreme treasure, one that was no weaker than the 24-stage red lotus of fire and the 3 treasures of Genesis. Even though it was not a primordial supreme treasure, it was still a rare treasure. It was the pupil left behind by an undying realm expert who cultivated the law of death and eye techniques. It was also because of this that this pupil was even larger than the sun and moon stars. After all, the sun and moon were only transformed from Pangu's left and right eyes. Pangu had not yet reached the undying realm, even though he was no weaker than an ordinary undying realm expert. However, this person was someone who specialized in eye techniques. Gaze of Death. The moment the pupil appeared, an aura of death began to spread and interweave, forming a wave of death that swept across the world. Then a cold, Hongjun Tiandao will of death, looking down from above, instantly locked onto the World Tree clone. The World Dao formed by the 3,000 Great Daos had formed the World Guardian Great Technique. Facing by Tong's close to 100 peerless techniques, it seemed so fragile at this moment. The silver bottle broke, the water splashed, and the 4 strings tore like silk. Facing the gaze of the Eye of Death, the World Guardian's barrier was torn apart in an instant. Seeing this, the onlookers could not help but gasp at the same time. This was because the moment the Eye of Death appeared, everyone felt an overwhelming will of death reverberating between heaven and earth. At this moment, it was even more shocking than the primordial heavenly demon scroll that the original demon used earlier. This was because this was actually somewhat similar to the equalization Great Tao that had manifested in the arena. It should be known that this was only the pupil of a dead, undying realm expert, yet it exploded with such power. As a result, all living beings seemed to be shrouded by the shadow of death. Deep in their hearts, they spontaneously felt uneasy, unable to stop the power that resembled the law of Tao. This feeling was like an old man who was at the end of his lifespan, unable to stop the steps of death. What great by Tong! I didn't expect him to have such a trump card. I really underestimated him. Yeah, I thought as close to 100 eye techniques were his trump card. I didn't expect him to have such a trump card. How impressive. Now is not the time to be happy. Bai Tong has a trump card, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't have one too. Seeing Bai Tong's unexpected counterattack, the Poison God Marquis and the rest, who originally did not have much hope, suddenly regained their vigor. However, this time, no one dared to underestimate the World Tree clone anymore. Everyone was quietly waiting for his counterattack. This was because this time, the World Guardian Mystique could no longer be unstoppable. As expected, each of the 3,000 Great Tao can be proven. Although the Great Tao is divided into high, and low levels, the specific power still depends on the individual. The moment the Eye of Death appeared, the universe was shrouded by the profound meaning of death. As the first person to bear the brunt, no one understood the sharpness of this item better than him. It was not that he had never seen the law of death before. Not to mention the others, the main body cultivated the law of reincarnation, and the law that Mosquito Dauren cultivated also contained the law of death. The life and death gore that was given to him by Ho Tu and later integrated into the timeless arc also contained the law of death. Furthermore, because the World Tree clone cultivated the World Tao, it had also comprehended the law of death. However, this was more or less contained. The World Tree clone had never seen such a pure, rich, and vast law of death. Although it knew the law of death, in front of this will of death, it was like a firefly in front of the bright moon. Heaven's will is like a blade cut. Jodion star defend. Infinite sea of blood roll. All heaven's reincarnation leak. After the World Guardian was broken, the World Tree clone cast several defensive mystiques almost instantly. Chapter 1243. These divine powers that the World Tree clone had displayed were all unique divine powers that belonged to him, himself, or Mosquito Dauren. In the past, if it wasn't an impregnable fortress, then it would be an unparalleled offense. Even if one stood still and allowed others to attack, even if one had a supreme treasure on him, it would not be easy to break through his defenses in a short period of time. Or perhaps it would be fine if he didn't move, but once he did, he would unleash earth-shattering might. This could be seen from the previous battle between the World Tree Clone and the Heavenly Venerate of Primordial Beginning. However, the situation was very different now. It was completely different. These divine abilities seemed to have become fake and inferior products. When faced with the Eye of Death, they were completely defeated with a single touch. The World Guardian Divine Power did not work. The Heaven Saber Divine Power did not work. The Starbearer Divine Power did not work. The Reincarnation Divine Power did not work, and the Boundless Bloodsea Divine Power did not work. It was not that these divine powers had become weak, but that the divine power they faced was too strong. Upon seeing this scene, everyone was very shocked. If they were to put themselves in Baitong's shoes and face the Eye of Death, they would probably not be much better than the World Tree Clone, especially those who could not compare to the World Tree Clone. For example, the Heavenly Venerate of Primordial Beginning, Jain Juni, and the people below the mid-stage Primordial Chaos on the Poison God Marquis side. How could Hutu, Madame Baiwa, and the others, whose cultivation level was above Baitong's, not feel emotional? Earlier, when Baitong had displayed nearly 100 Peerless Eye techniques, it was already enough to shock them. Because if they were the slightest bit careless, they could only end up suffering an unexpected defeat. Moreover, even if they were cautious if they wanted to deal with Baitong, it would definitely not be easy. It should be known that the gap between mid-stage Primordial Chaos and early-stage Primordial Chaos was not smaller than the gap between Primordial Chaos and below. However, they had not expected that Baitong would actually have such a move in addition to 100 Eye techniques. It seemed to be comparable to the trump card in their hands. This death will seem to be the most irreversible ultimate power in the world, which could not be defied since ancient times. In front of this power, everything seemed so small, as if it could only follow its will and step into death step by step. It felt like life was not in its control. In particular, the Eye of Death complemented his innate godly eyes. His Eye of Death was like adding wings to a tiger. In the hands of others, it might only be twice as powerful, but in his hands it could be 3 times, 5 times, or even 10 times as powerful. Their cultivation bases were profound, and they were protected by precious treasures. However, even the spectators, who were protected by the arenas, felt their soul consciousnesses being restrained and on the verge of leaving their bodies. Moreover, this was only the remnant effect of the gaze of death. Putting that aside, on the battlefield, after 100 Eyes took out the Eye of Death, he saw that the World Tree's avatar's mystical ability, which he could not shake no matter how hard he tried, was broken in a split second. Following that, he unleashed several other mystical abilities that were not any weaker than the World Guardian. However, they were all useless. The Death Gaze was about to land on the World Tree Clone's main body, the Primordial Spirit. Once infected by the will of death, it would be troublesome to get rid of it. Seeing this, Baitong heaved a sigh of relief. The World Tree Clone was not invincible. If even his Eye of Death couldn't do anything to the other party, then 100 Eyes would really be in despair. What about Huanyu? Although he was shocked by 100 Eyes' means and the power of the Eye of Death, he did not panic in the face of danger and was not worried at all. After all, it was completely useless to worry. The most important thing was that although the situation was dangerous, he still had the confidence to escape unscathed. What a good Eye of Death. If I can take it away, whether it is integrated into the world path or into the timeless arc, it will be a great supplement for me. At this moment, Huanyu was thinking about how to snatch the Eye of Death away by trickery, or he could shatter it and achieve his own world path. In this way, in addition to the 5 elements, reincarnation, devouring, slaughter, and other great Taoists, there would be another great Tao that was almost complete. Moreover, the Tao of life and death was connected to reincarnation. Understanding the great Tao of death would definitely be of great benefit to understanding the great Tao of reincarnation. Or, He could integrate this treasure into the timeless arc and complete the last unit of the eternal divine furnace. In this way, as long as he enhanced the timeless arc's body, breaking through to the supreme level was just around the corner. Once the timeless arc broke through to the supreme level, not only would his own cultivation usher in another leap, but his safety would also be greatly improved, especially at this critical moment when he was about to enter the infinite void. From the moment 100 Eyes summoned the Eye of Death to the moment Death Gaze was about to fall on Huan Yu's body, everything had actually happened in the blink of an eye. He felt an inexorable power of the soul path of death shrouding his body and mind. Even the entire inner world of desolation began to turn into an abyss of death bit by bit. The most important thing was that the soul consciousness belonging to the World Tree clone was shrouded by this taboo power and was pulled by a huge force, wanting to break out of the body. What a good death gaze. It's really impressive, but it's still not enough to deal with me with this. At this time, the World Tree clone did not dare to let his guard down. With his senses, if he could not act in time and fend off the enemy outside the country, even if he defeated 100 Eyes in the end, it would be quite troublesome. Therefore, he immediately took out his trump card at this critical moment. Two suns competing brilliance. The next moment, everyone felt their vision blur. Then, they saw two suns rising into the sky at the same time, one on the left and one on the right. However, one was a black sun that was full of deathly stillness and appeared to devour all light. The other was a glazed sun that erupted with colorful and all-encompassing light, as if everything was under control. Of course, they were not suns, but two pupils that were like the sun. Yes, the trump card that the World Tree clone took out was also an eye. It was also emotionless, selfless, and equally powerful. The only difference was in the form of their presentation. The Eye of Hongjun Tiandao. Yes, the trump card of the World Tree clone was his Hongjun Tiandao ritual implement, the Eye of Hongjun Tiandao. The importance of this item was like the golden plate of 6 paths of reincarnation in Hoodoo's hands to the underworld, and the jade archive of good fortune in Hongjuan's hands to Hongjun Tiandao. This was an important treasure with unparalleled power. Back then, when the World Tree clone opened up the inner world of desolation, the great Tao sent down the chi of heaven and earth, the heaven-opening purple chi in boundless merit. Although he did not use them to condense a treasure, the power of the world source still condensed and naturally condensed the treasure of the world source, the artifact of Hongjun Tiandao, the Eye of Hongjun Tiandao. Although the power of such a treasure was extraordinary, once it left the world, its power would be greatly reduced, just like the Kongtong seal in Fushi's hands. Chapter 1244. But in the end, the World Tree clone was different from Fushi. This was because the power of the Kongtong seal in Fushi's hands came from the desolation of humanity. Although he was a Renhuang and could borrow the power of humanity, he could not completely control it. Therefore, once it left the desolation, the power of humanity would be cut off. The World Tree clone, on the other hand, walked the path of transcendence. It was the Tao of the world. It was different from others, and its power belonged to itself. This was the difference between a saint and a mixed element. Although it was easy for a saint to break through, and they were stronger in their own world, they were limited by the world. Just like fish and water, humans were like fish, and the world was like water. In the water, humans are naturally like fish in water. Once they left, unless they were a flying dragon in the sky, or a koan turned into a pung, otherwise, mixed element was different. Although it was more difficult in the early stages, and after the breakthrough, he would be suppressed by his own world. Everything he had was his. His power was his own. The primordial spirit, primordial chi, and essence chi were the world. The world's Hongjun Tiandao artifact was his own. Therefore, the power of his Hongjun Tiandao artifact was not weakened at all. Instead, it became stronger. Although this artifact seemed to be smaller than the Eye of Death in Bai Tong's hands, it was understandable. After all, the owner of the Eye of Death was an undying expert, and not an ordinary one at that. After all, Even the sun and moon stars that Pangu's eyes evolved were slightly weaker. But this did not mean that Huan Yu's Hongjun Tiandao artifact was inferior. Although it might be weaker in terms of size and quality, it was more agile. After all, although the Eye of Death was powerful, his original body had already fallen. No matter how powerful this artifact was, it was just a dead object. Although the Eye of Hongjun Tiandao was relatively weak, it had great potential. Most importantly, he had the World Tree clone behind him, and he had strong support from the Desolation World. As long as the Desolation World was not destroyed, and as long as the World Tree clone did not die, the Hongjun Tiandao, I could continue to improve. Sooner or later, it would catch up to the Eye of Death, or even surpass it. Furthermore, even if he couldn't compete with them now, it wasn't that he couldn't compete with them in terms of power, but rather in terms of size and quality. After all, even though a spiritual treasure was great, the amount of power it could unleash depended on who was in possession of it. For example, the power of a lower-grade, primordial spiritual treasure in the hands of the primordial Lord of Heaven and in the hands of Hongjun could not be mentioned in the same breath. If the 100 Eyes was said to be compatible with the Eye of Death because it was born with a divine eye, then the World Tree clone and the Hongjun Tiandao were really a perfect match. This was the difference between the founder, the original owner, and the successor. Under normal circumstances, unless one was exceptionally talented and blessed by the heavens, following the path of the predecessors would at most be comparable to the original owner. If one wanted to surpass the original owner's path, they would have to blaze another path. Otherwise, they would only be able to live in the shadows of others for the rest of their lives. If it was said that 100 Eyes of Death gave people a feeling of pure power and fear, in that case, Huan Yu's Eye of Heavenly Tao gave off a feeling that, apart from being powerful, it was more of a kind of tolerance. It encompassed all phenomena in the world, and there was nothing it couldn't contain. At the end of the day, the Eye of the Heavenly Tao represented the authority of the primordial world, and the primordial world was a normal world, unlike the other worlds that were more extreme like the Shadow World, the Death World, and the Blood Sea World. Therefore, the Eye of the Heavenly Tao might not be as good as the other worlds in terms of specialization, but in terms of breadth and comprehensive aspects, it was a crushing victory. As long as the gap between the two was not too big, the Hongjun Tiandao, I could naturally restrain the Eye of Death. Was the gap between them big? Big. However, that was when the owner of the Eye of Death was alive. Now, the Eye of Death was just a rare treasure comparable to a top-grade innate treasure. He saw a huge, jade-like pupil that was filled with a glazed brilliance. It was like the great Tao that had existed since ancient times, with a trace of eternal aura. There were visible chaotic colors on it, and vein-like stripes were densely distributed around the pupil. If one counted carefully, there were exactly 3,000 large and thick veins, and there were 129,600 small veins. As for the other blurry and even smaller veins, there were countless of them. The eternal aura was naturally because of the timeless arc and the everlasting lotus. Yang Mei comprehended a bit of the eternal blessing, and he could comprehend a bit of the eternal Tao. Fang Qingshan sat on the timeless arc, observed the eternal lotus seed for a long time, and experienced several eternal blessings. How could he not have some understanding of the eternal Tao? As for the 3,000 crystal veins, it was naturally the 3,000 great Taos. Among them, the reincarnation, 5 elements, blood, slaughter, devour, and other great Taos were the thickest. As for the slightly more detailed, 129,600, it was the small Tao derived from the 3,000 great Taos. In other words, it was the difference between the innate great Taos and the acquired great Taos. It was the same for the blurry and smaller ones behind. Along with the appearance of the Hongjun Tiandao Eye, there was also the boundless mysticism. Under normal circumstances, if the appearance of the Hongjun Tiandao Eye was a joyous occasion, then there would naturally be purple qi coming from the east, auspicious light covering the ground, heavenly flowers falling, golden lotuses emerging from the ground, magical conches blowing, magical drums beating, fairies holding fans, and golden boys holding cauldrons. If it was to show majesty, then it would be the Tao of heavenly punishment. Along with it would be dark clouds pressing down on the city, violent winds gathering, storms raging, and purple lightning silver dragons. It was an immeasurable tribulation, and it was a boundless murderous aura. And now, the situation was naturally self-evident. In the blink of an eye, a vast and boundless tribulation cloud condensed in the void, bringing endless pressure to all living beings in the world. It was an omnidirectional pressure on the mind, the soul, and the body. Countless lightning flashed continuously, and under the contrast of the divine eye, it was even more terrifying. Countless voids twisted and collapsed. The eye of Hongjun Tiandao. If they had seen the eye of death, they would only be surprised by its power. But when they saw the eye of Hongjun Tiandao, they were even more astonished. This was especially so for those who had seen the eye of Hongjun Tiandao, but could not tell the specifics. The shock that the eye of Hongjun Tiandao brought them was far greater than that of the eye of death. After all, the eye of Hongjun Tiandao was the embodiment of the great Tao of heaven and earth. It controlled the reincarnation of the sun and moon, controlled birth, aging, sickness, and death, as well as fate and merit. It hunted on behalf of the heavens and managed all karma and calamity techniques. It was reasonable to say that in the desolation, this object should be the most powerful treasure of Hongjun. How could it appear in the hands of the World Tree's clone? No one had an explanation for this. Even those who couldn't figure it out, no matter how hard they thought about it, would forget about it at this moment. Because at this moment, the eye of Hongjun Tiandao, and the eye of death had reached the decisive moment. Two eyes stared at each other. Then, without the slightest hesitation, the eye of Hongjun Tiandao, and the pitch-black eye of death collided head-on. Bang! Crack! The loudest sound was silent, and the largest elephant was silent. When the two divine eyes collided, everyone only felt their vision go white and their ears go deaf. In an instant, they could see and hear nothing. After a while, there was naturally a deafening sound of a bell. Even with the protection of the arena, it was very uncomfortable. Chapter 1245. After all, the Eye of Death was a treasure left behind by an undying realm expert. It was comparable to a peak natural treasure. The Eye of Hongjun Tiandao also represented a world of desolation. Although it was only at the initial stage, it was definitely not weaker than the Eye of Death. It was fortunate that the Great Path Arena was comparable to a chaos spiritual treasure. Otherwise, if it had been a weaker chaos spiritual treasure, he might have been torn apart, not to mention protecting the spectators. Even so, most of the power of the Great Path Ring was used to balance the powers of the two sides and suppress the repercussions of the battle. Therefore, when the spectators with lower levels of cultivation were hit by the aura, some of them directly fainted. Virtue does not match the position. This was because they didn't have enough karmic luck. If they had enough karmic luck, even if it was extremely uncomfortable, they would still be able to remain clear-headed. Perhaps they would even be able to observe a bit or half of it, which would become resources for advancing in the future. Putting all of this aside, after the initial silence, an earth-shattering explosion swept out like the end of the world. The entire arena seemed to be shaking. The two wills began a tug-of-war. The winner was king, and the loser was a bandit. On one side was the will of death, and on the other side was the world Tao. One side essence, the other side gambling. On one hand, he wanted to completely kill the other party, and on the other hand, he wanted to bring the other party into his system and assimilate them. It was like a tug-of-war. On the surface, 100 pupils still had the upper hand. After all, his cultivation was stronger than the World Tree's clone, and his magic power was stronger. In addition, the Eye of Death was stronger than the Hongjun Tiandao's eye in terms of quality. But in reality, it depended on who had a stronger endurance, a deeper foundation, and a longer burst of power. Huan Yu, who owned a desolation world, was obviously much stronger than 100 Eyes in terms of endurance and foundation. If this dragged on for a long time, the momentum would be exhausted. If they could not take advantage of the explosive power of the Eye of Death to suppress the Hongjun Tiandao's Eye and universe, the scales of victory would slowly tilt towards the side of desolation. Damn it! Damn it! I didn't expect him to walk the world Dao. The moment he saw the Hongjun Tiandao Eye appear, how could Bai Tong not understand what was going on? After all, boundless void was different from desolation. Although there were very few who walked the world Dao, it wasn't as if there were none. It was precisely because of this that he understood why Huan Yu could match him and even suppress him with his first stage primordial chaos cultivation. What a Huan Yu! To think that there would be someone who cultivates the Dao of the world here. It's the world Dao. Although the path is difficult, it's invincible. Once I break through to the primordial chaos realm, I can seize the title. Sure enough, he also has a trump card. Bai Tong is in danger. Not only Bai Tong, the poison god Marquis and the others also understood. But what was the use of understanding? The only chance to turn the tables now was whether Bai Tong could erupt with absolute strength and break the Hongjun Tiandao Eye in one go. If he could, he would win. If he couldn't, he would lose. Are we going to risk it or not? Bai Tong was a little hesitant. This was because risking one's life wasn't just a simple matter of belief and perseverance. It involved many other aspects, especially when risking one's life didn't mean that one would definitely succeed. If he gave it his all and still failed in the end, the price he would have to pay would be unbearable. But if he didn't go all out, he would be a little unwilling. If he gave it his all, there would be a glimmer of hope. If he didn't give it his all, there would be no hope at all. Although thousands of thoughts were running through his mind, in fact, only a millionth of a second had passed in the outside world. Although the time was short, some things had already begun to take shape. The Hongjun Tiandao Eye's firepower was fully unleashed. The 3,000 Great Path nomological laws were integrated into one. It was natural and condensed combat power to attack the Eye of Death again and again. The attack power of the Eye of Death was evenly distributed among the 3,000 Great Paths and distributed to every corner of the desolation. If the attack hit one point, it would break the surface. The damage would be shared and disintegrated. The Eye of Death needed to go all out to attack and defend, so the consumption would inevitably be a little high. Originally, he couldn't compete with others in a war of attrition. Under such circumstances, the situation was even more precarious. All right. Victory or defeat will be decided in one move. In the end, Bai Tong still decided to give it his all, because if he didn't give it his all, he would really be somewhat unwilling. Death Scythe. A shout came from Bai Tong's mouth, and the Eye of Death suddenly shone brightly. However, the Eye of Death suddenly erupted with overwhelming black filaments that intertwined and turned into a giant scythe surrounded by the power of death. It had a kind of death aura that could split heaven and earth. This item had the same wonderful effect as Mosquito Doran's companion numinous treasure, the Death Scythe, in the timeless Arkansas. However, its power was more than 1,000 times greater. This was the ultimate profundity contained in the Eye of Death. Once it was activated, it would far exceed the strongest attack that Bai Tong could unleash at the moment. However, a black crescent arc light condensed from the profound meaning of death, accompanied by a suffocating death aura, slashed toward the Hongjun Tiandao Eye. What a good Eye of Death! I didn't expect it to still have such a move at this time. Looking at the death scythe slashing toward him, Huan Yu could not help but sigh in his heart. This saber move had the power of a peak mid-stage primordial chaos expert. In the face of this saber move, even an ordinary 4th stage or 5th stage primordial chaos expert would not be able to handle it, let alone an early stage primordial chaos expert. Unfortunately, he was not an ordinary early stage primordial chaos expert. He was a titled primordial chaos expert, and he was not fighting alone. Bai Tong could use the Eye of Death to activate a backup move, and he could also use the power of his original body. Break! With a slight jolt of his heart, Huan Yu communicated with the power of his original body. However, in the inner world, a timeless arc manifested, and the desolation world immediately stabilized. At the same time, an overwhelming power entered the Hongjun Tiandao. An attack that was more powerful than the Death Scythe swept out with irresistible force. Heaven's will was violent, surrounded by a layer of vast nothingness with 5 colors and 10 lights. There was a loud explosion, and its power penetrated space-time, reincarnation, penetrated fate, and karma. On the other side, the huge shadow of the dark eye of death finally revealed a trace of panic and uneasiness. This was not because the eye of death had spirituality, but because Baitong had finally sensed its own failure. However, it was too late, or rather, it did not have the ability to turn the tables, so it could only stretch its neck and wait to be killed. Boom! Under the vast impact of the Hongjun Tiandao, the eye of death suddenly showed a trace of instability, and then it showed signs of being defeated. However, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that when the Hongjun Tiandao broke through the eye of death, it released 3,000 Dao chains and shackled the eye of death, as if it wanted to seal and suppress it. This was actually the idea of the World Tree clone at the beginning. It wanted to take the eye of death for itself. When the time came, it would be extremely good whether it was used to comprehend the death law or to fill in the timeless Arkansas. Chapter 1246. He did not know if it was because his own cultivation consumed too much time and resources, or if he had inherited Fong Qingshan's greed, or if there were other reasons. In any case, as long as he encountered something good, as long as there was a slight possibility, be it the World Tree clone, Fong Qingshan, or Mosquito Dowrin, there was a chance that he would kill wrongly and not let them go. Therefore, in Fong Qingshan's opinion, it was perfectly normal for the World Tree clone to want to snatch the eye of death. Moreover, even if he was putting himself in someone else's shoes, if there was a treasure placed in front of him and he had the chance to obtain it, no one would give it up. Of course, this was human nature, and it would not be so easy for the person who had been deprived of it to accept it. Bang! The eye of death was broken by the Hongjun Tiandao. Of course, with the quality of the eye of death, it was obviously impossible for it to be broken by the Hongjun Tiandao in one blow. What he broke was only the primordial spirit attached to the eye of death, and it did not cause much damage to the main body. Therefore, as the host, Baitong was naturally implicated. However, blood burst out of his god's eye, and his eyes turned dark. The piercing pain seemed to make him doubt life, as if his eyes had been crippled. His primordial spirit was even more unstable, like a broken porcelain doll, and hideous wounds appeared on his body at a speed visible to the naked eye. Blood spurted out like a fountain. It was dazzling. Baitong did not care much about this. After all, in a line of work, bumps were common. As long as it was not a fatal injury, as long as it did not hurt his foundation, it would be fine. Although the injury was not small, it was still within his acceptable range. He was just a little sad that he had a bad start. He did not expect to encounter a primordial chaos cultivator who cultivated the world Tao in a desolate place like the Pan-Gu chaotic world, and he was beaten up even after using his trump card. However, very soon, he did not have time to be sad, because compared to failure and the loss of luck that was about to be faced, the World Tree clone actually wanted to deprive him of the Eye of Death. How could that do? This was his trump card. Not only could it be used to protect his life, but because it was compatible with his divine eye, it would harmonize with the Tao and be beneficial to his cultivation of the great Tao. If the World Tree clone was taken away, it would be a huge problem. He did not believe that the duck that was already in his mouth would fly away. Losing the secret technique was just a drop in the bucket. Losing luck was just a small injury. If he lost the Eye of Death, he would really go bankrupt. Therefore, the 3,000 chains wrapped around the Eye of Death's body like an octopus. Then they pulled forcefully and tried to devour it bit by bit. On the other hand, the Eye of Death had been severely injured by the Hongjun Tiandao Eye, and its strength was not even 10% of its original. Now that it was shackled by the Tao, it could only struggle bitterly. He was about to be completely absorbed by the Hongjun Tiandao Eye, and his control over the Eye of Death was getting weaker and weaker. I admit defeat. With no time to think, Bai Tong roared out these 3 words at the fastest speed he had ever done in his life. Whoosh! Almost at the same time, 2 beams of white light landed and locked onto Huan Yu and Bai Tong. With a whoosh, the 2 of them were teleported out. The Eye of Death, which was about to be devoured by the Hongjun Tiandao Eye, also disappeared in an instant. However, Lushi was not suppressed by the Hongjun Tiandao Eye and disappeared with Huan Yu. Instead, like Bai Tong, he was instantly returned to the Dao arena. Sigh, what a pity. Just a little more. Seeing this scene, the World Tree clone, Mosquito Daoran, and Fong Qingshan all sighed with regret. After all, if he had this Eye of Death, it could improve the understanding of the World Tree, his main body, and Mosquito Daoran Dao, and completely integrate it into the Timeless Arkansas. It could also speed up the advancement of the Timeless Arkansas. Forget it. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If it's not meant to be, don't force it. He shook his head and threw away the greedy thoughts in his heart. He felt a surge of destiny merging into the world desolation, and the various mystic arts and mystical powers also broadened the horizons of the World Tree clone. This trip was not in vain. On the other side, Bai Tong could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Fortunately, if he was a step late, the Eye of Death would be taken away. Even if he admitted defeat, he would not be able to get it back. As for the other people at the peak of the 3rd-level primordial chaos, they were also glad that Bai Tong was the first to go up. After all, they had seen the World Tree clone make a move, and everyone felt a great pressure in their hearts. They had no confidence in defeating the World Tree clone. When fighting with the World Tree clone, there was a 90% chance that they would fail. Failure meant injury, loss of destiny, and mystical powers. Knowing that they would fail, how could they be willing? The most important thing was not actually failure. Although it was ugly to lose, and although there were losses, they did not care very much. Victory and defeat were unpredictable. What they cared about was the final move of the World Tree clone. It had almost taken away Bai Tong's Eye of Death. If it were them, they would probably have received the same treatment. Therefore, no one was willing to encounter him. After all, it was better to be safe than sorry. If they were unlucky and he succeeded, wouldn't they suffer a huge loss? As for the people who came later, would they be the same as the World Tree clone, or even better than the World Tree clone? However, they snorted disdainfully at this. Did they really think that tidal primordial chaos was so common? If that was the case, why would there be a distinction between tidal primordial chaos and ordinary primordial chaos? The rarer something was, the greater its value. The reason why tidal primordial chaos was so precious was not only because of their powerful combat power, but also because of their rarity. Ordinary desolation worlds and chaotic worlds might not even have one in countless eras. Even in the boundless void and the myriad realms, only one tidal primordial chaos might appear out of thousands of primordial chaos. Moreover, the World Tree clone was not an ordinary tidal primordial chaos. Although the road ahead of those who walked the world Dao was difficult, even tidal primordial chaos was not at the bottom of the pack. As expected, the following competition seemed to prove this point. Tong Tian, although I am powerful, I am not a tidal primordial chaos, so is still acceptable. Tong Tian's 4 immortal vanquishing swords were powerful, and the immortal vanquishing sword array was one of the 3 supreme array formations of beneficial desolation. It was said that it could not be broken by the 4 saints, but it was not amazing. After all, in the boundless void, such an array formation was not common, but it was definitely not as rare as beneficial desolation. The people on the Poison God Marquis side could cultivate to primordial chaos, and as void thieves, none of them were simple. Although they might not have a powerful trump card like Bai Tong's Eye of Death, they were at most a little weaker. Tong Tian's immortal vanquishing sword array was said to be unbreakable by the 4 saints, but it was just unbreakable. It did not mean that he could make others stay. Moreover, the array had a weakness. Once it was fixed and the 4 sword gates were removed, the array would collapse on its own. Chapter 1247. The immortal slaying sword formation had made a name for itself in the desolation. It was so famous that it made people pale at the mention of it. However, even in the desolation, if one thought about it carefully, the immortal slaying sword formation was nothing more than a paper tiger. It was famous, but in reality, it had never been useful. On the contrary, every time it was used, its host would suffer greatly, as if it was cursed. When it was in the hands of Ro, it was broken by Hong Jun. As a result, the huge devil sect fell apart. Hong Jun plucked the peaches and made the wedding clothes for others. When it was in the hands of Tong Tian, it was broken by the primeval Lord of Heaven and the others. As a result, the Jie sect, which was worshipped by thousands of immortals, scattered like monkeys when the tree fell, helping the Buddhist sect. Therefore, the immortal slaying sword formation was not as powerful as imagined, especially when facing the poison marquis and his people. After all, they had seen too many of such formations. At the beginning, they could only gain a little advantage when they were adapting to the formation. Once they could not cut the Gordian knot, they would discover some clues and adapt, and the formation would be in danger. The boundless void is indeed different from the wilderness. There are so many genius-level experts there, and their methods are so marvelous that it's simply breathtaking. Every single one of them has the qualifications to look down on all heroes in the wilderness. I really can't wait to see for myself. In the audience, Fong Qingshan and the others could not help but sigh when they saw the opponents who were evenly matched with Tong Tian. These were just some peripheral members of the lifeless demon palace, just the tip of the iceberg. How could they not be excited when they were already so powerful? 100 barges vying for the current, 1,000 sails competing, great waves washing away the sand. The great Tao was not something that could be fed on wind and dew. Meditation was all about the great Tao. It was about fighting with the great Tao, fighting with the heavens, fighting with the earth, and fighting with people, especially when it came to fighting with others. Only when the more outstanding people competed with each other, the more intense the collision would be. Otherwise, how could two mediocre people compete with each other? Just as Fong Qingshan, Yang Mei, and the others were excited about the future and the boundless void, the Poison Marquis and the others heaved a sigh of relief. The Poison God Marquis and the others heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Tong Tian and Laozi. To be exact, he only heaved a sigh of relief when he faced Tong Tian and was shocked when he faced Laozi. What scared them was Laozi's trump card, Sanqing, in one breath. This magical power could produce 3 clones that were exactly the same as the original body in one go. Moreover, their minds were connected. Compared to the celestial slaying sword formation that could not be broken by the 4 sages, it was much more awesome. Even in the boundless void, this magical power could be considered excellent. After all, if the 4 of them were put together, they would not be able to communicate with each other. Even if an ordinary person had 3 more helpers, their battle prowess would not be as simple as doubling. Even if they were to set up an ordinary 4 symbols formation, it would definitely not be weaker than Tong Tian's immortal slaying sword formation. Putting that aside, the Poison God Marquis and the others were celebrating too early. This was because after Tong Tian and Laozi, the appearance of Mosquito Daorin, Hutu, and Ro almost made them doubt their lives. This was because they had originally thought that apart from the World Tree's clone, there were no other titled primordial immortals. Unfortunately, Mosquito Daorin, Hutu, and Ro were all titled primordial immortals. Mosquito Doran's 24 grade, 1 red lotus of fire, and his natal magical power, the flood dragon mosquito sting, were enough to make people retreat. The 24 grade, 1 red lotus of fire was unparalleled in defense. It stood above one's head and was invincible. The flood dragon mosquito sting could pierce through defense and devour unparalleled. At this point, ordinary primordial immortals could be stabbed accurately. The combination of the two was always successful. Not to mention ordinary early-stage primordial immortals. Even early-stage primordial immortals, or the more powerful mid-stage primordial immortals, would not be able to bear the consequences in his hands. This was evident from the fact that Mosquito Dowrin, who had just been born, had devoured the goddess of Turtle Spirit, a late-stage Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal, and the 12th grade Golden Lotus of Merit, which was second only to the primordial immortal treasure. If that was all, it would have been fine. Although he was powerful, who had never encountered two enemies that they could not defeat. However, because Mosquito Dowrin directly relied on the shell of the 24 grade, one Red Lotus of Fire, he stabbed the Flood Dragon Mosquito Sting regardless of anything, and then swallowed it like a whale. Fortunately, he did not suck the other party dry. It was unlucky to be his opponent. He did not do it on purpose, but it was because he had learned from the mistake of the World Tree clone. If he was fast, he would get it, but if he was slow, he wouldn't get it. Just now, he almost snatched the Eye of Death, but in the end, it was all for naught. This made Fong Qingshan and the rest very happy. Therefore, at this moment, this guy's greed was acting up again. Compared to Fong Qingshan and the World Tree's clone, Mosquito Dorn's advancement was both easy and difficult. It was easy because of his innate mystical ability, the Flood Dragon Mosquito Sting. Just like before, there was a shortcut. As long as there were resources, as long as he continued to devour, he could continue to improve. The difficulty was that after breaking through, if he wanted to improve further, he would need to consume more resources. Thinking about the consumption of Mosquito Dowrin when he broke through to the primordial chaos realm, just the primordial cardinal treasure, the gate of eternal life, was enough to make people vomit blood. Although Fong Qingshan had a big business, plundering the heavens and owning the ruins, he did not have any surplus food when facing himself, Mosquito Dowrin, the World Tree's clone, and the Timeless Ark, who were big eaters. Therefore, after reaching the primordial chaos realm, although Mosquito Dowrin could take the shortcut, he was surpassed by Fong Qingshan because he could not keep up with the resources. Now that there were ready-made resources, how could he let go of the matter that concerned the advancement of his cultivation level? In the end, Mosquito Dowrin thought that the other party would also live in the desolation in the future. After they left, the Shura Emperor was still there, and the other party had promised to pay a certain price. Otherwise, he would not have been willing to make things too awkward. He could have directly made the other party unable to even admit defeat. Sigh, he's too kind after all. After returning to the spectators' seats, Mosquito Dowrin lamented. Upon hearing this, the corners of Hutu and the others' mouths could not help but twitch, and they subconsciously moved away from him. What else could they say to such a shameless person? This was Mosquito Dowrin. Hutu and Ro's performance was not inferior. Ro had an ancient demon gate at the Chaos Spiritual Treasure level, and it was not an ordinary Chaos Spiritual Treasure. It was definitely a fine one. Although it was impossible for him to fully unleash its power with his current cultivation level, it was more than enough to deal with a mere early-stage primordial chaos expert. Moreover, as someone who had once competed with Hongjun, although he had fallen behind now, it did not mean that he could not do it. Instead, he had built a stronger foundation. After all, people who cultivated in Devil Dao could advance by leaps and bounds in the early stages, but it was easy for them to reach a bottleneck in the later stages. However, Ro did not have this concern now. Whether this peck and drink was good or bad could not be determined in a short time. Chapter 1248. It was the same for Mosquito, Dowrin, and Ro, as well as Hutu. She might be a little weaker than Mosquito, Dowrin, and Ro, but that was only relatively speaking. Compared to Tong Tian and Laozi, she definitely had a crushing victory. Logically speaking, Hutu should be a little weaker than Sanqing. But who asked her to be so blessed? Not only did she not die, but she also benefited from the misfortune. She broke through to the primordial chaos realm and formed a Tao that fitted her body. Her cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. Although she became a saint later than Laozi and the others, she broke through to the mid-stage primordial chaos realm first because of the Tao feedback power. Although she did not have the heaven-opening treasure, nor did she use the Pangu Palace, she had the reincarnation treasure. Moreover, because body refinement was the main and chi refinement was the auxiliary, and body refinement was usually the top existence in the same batch, as long as her cultivation caught up, she would be better than Sanqing and the others. Of course, even without these, if Hoodoo really exploded, even Mosquito Dowrin and Ro would not be able to withstand it. After all, the foundation that Pangu had left for the Wu people was indeed a little deeper. Even if she did not use the Pangu Palace, she still had other chaotic spiritual treasures, although 99% of them were broken. But there were still 3 kilograms of nails in a broken boat. Broken did not mean that it could not be used, nor did it mean that it was weak. If she threw all of them out like talismans, not to mention that her cultivation would be suppressed by the arena, even if she was at her peak, the divine poison marquis would probably have to retreat in such a situation. The consequences of fighting head-on would only be death. It was even possible that the entire Great Path Ring would be destroyed by her. Of course, under normal circumstances, Huda would not be so crazy. But if there was a day when she really needed it, she would definitely surprise her opponent. Of course, Desolation had surprised the divine Poison Marquis and the others, and the lifeless Demon Palace did not disappoint Fong Qingshan and the others, especially the one called Dragon Absolute. The Dragon Clan was a huge and powerful clan. Whether it was in the Desolation Continent, the Great Thousand Worlds, or even the Immeasurable Void, the Dragon Clan was ranked among the top. At the very least, the Stone Clan that was famous because of the stone I couldn't be compared to the Dragon Clan. The dragons in Desolation usually had the surname Ao, such as Ao Guang and Ao Bing. Although the Dragon Absolute's surname wasn't Ao, he was still a member of the Dragon Clan. However, he was not born in the Dragon Clan. He was not a direct descendant of the dragon race, but a pure bloodline. The so-called dragon race was actually very easy to understand. For example, in Desolation, the water in the world belonged to the 4 seas, and the scales of the 10,000 races came from the dragon race. The Dragon Clan was the origin of all the Dragon Clan. Eternal World had its own dragon plane. Within the Immeasurable Void, there was also the Dragon Clan's private territory, the Dragon Clan's Chaos World. That was the home of the Dragon Clan. As for the direct descendant and the pure bloodline, it was even easier to understand. The Dragon Clan was lascivious by nature, coupled with the fact that powerful bloodlines made it difficult for them to give birth to offspring. Many subspecies of dragons were born through hybridization, such as the Coiling Dragon, the Flood Dragon, the Enslaved Dragon, and the Winged Dragon. The purest bloodline was the Golden Dragon, especially the 5-clawed Golden Dragon. The Golden Dragon was definitely not a Golden Dragon, but a mutated Black Dragon. It cultivated the Tao of Annihilation, which was a branch of destruction and slaughter. It was a mutant. He had a dignified appearance. His appearance couldn't be described as stunning, but he gave off an awe-inspiring and inviolable feeling. His golden robe didn't give off the feeling that he was a nouveau riche. Instead, it matched his temperament. He stood tall, and his entire body emitted a strong pressure, as though he was a cut above others. The 2 treasures in his hands were a spear and a pearl. The spear was the inverse scale spear. It was forged from his reverse scale and various natural treasures. There were traces of dragon, scale-like patterns on it, full of nobility and vitality. As though it had a life of its own, the scales rose and fell naturally, as though they were breathing. It was very mysterious. It wasn't any weaker than the God Slayer in Hongjuan's hands. As for the pearl, it was his dragon pearl of life. Of course, this dragon pearl had mutated. Because it had merged with a black dragon's dragon pearl, the Dragon Absolute had mutated and ended up in the void. Although these 2 items couldn't compare to Mosquito Doran's 24 ranks Red Lotus of Fire and Dragon Mosquito Sting, they weren't any weaker than top-grade primordial cardinal treasures. Moreover, because they were compatible with the Dragon Absolute, they could unleash 200% of its power. The spear struck out like a dragon, and it seemed to be on the verge of piercing through the primordial world. Space and reincarnation were pierced through, fate and karma were destroyed, and everything transformed into countless fragments that shot out in all directions. As for the dragon pearl, it was even more powerful. Just like the Eye of Death in Bai Tong's hands, once it was activated, it could explode with absolute power. After all, the Black Dragon was also an undying realm expert, even though it couldn't compare to the owner of the Eye of Death. Of course, under normal circumstances, the Dragon Absolute wouldn't explode because it could only maximize the benefits by slowly merging with the Dragon Pearl of Life. Otherwise, it would be a bit of a waste. Apart from the Dragon Absolute, there was another person who was quite good. In terms of bloodline, this person wasn't as good as the Dragon Absolute. In terms of cultivation, he had just reached the peak of Origin Level 3. In terms of spiritual treasures, the most powerful one was only a top-grade Primordial Cardinal Treasure. In terms of divine powers, the most powerful one was just like the one breath turning Sanqing. Moreover, he only had two, one for attack and one for defense. However, even so, the degree of difficulty in dealing with him wasn't any less than that of Bai Tong and the Dragon Absolute. The reason for this was because he had one skill that could dominate the world. Great wisdom could appear stupid. Great skill could appear clumsy. His bloodline wasn't outstanding, his talent wasn't great, and he didn't have many resources. However, he was able to endure loneliness and stubbornness. Moreover, he was able to eat every move and every drop of it. He had truly achieved a magical transformation, and his moves were like an antelope hanging its horns. He had unearthed the essence of cultivation methods, divine powers, and secret techniques, and even surpassed them. Such a person didn't have obvious flaws. His attack and defense weren't weak, and he couldn't break through his defense quickly. This was the most troublesome existence. Tontian, Laozi, Huan Yu, Hutu, Ro, Mosquito Dowrin, the Poison Marquis side Bai Tong, and the Dragon Absolute were 6 people. There were 12 early-stage primordial chaos people, and they used all kinds of cardinal treasures, divine powers, secret techniques, and array formations. The spectators were overwhelmed and dazzled. It was simply desolation, an unprecedented flourishing age. Even the fierce beasts, Dragon and Phoenix, Dao Fiends, and the Witch and Demon Tribulation couldn't compare. In this round, the Poison Marquis side lost. After all, Tontian and Laozi were fine, but Mosquito Dowrin and the other 3 people were really a cheat code. Even the weakest Huan Yu had the combat strength of a titled primordial chaos expert. Although the cultivation levels of Hutu and the others were suppressed to the early stage primordial chaos, their combat strength obviously wasn't suppressed much. At least in the same batch, the forces under the Poison Marquis and the others couldn't compare to them. Bai Tong, the Dragon Absolute, and the others were all good. Among them, Huan Nong and the others had also suppressed their cultivation levels of the 4th stage primordial chaos. However, this couldn't change the outcome. Chapter 1249. Just like the 10 matches below Primordial Chaos, Desolation's side had a good start. However, the Poison Marquis and the others had won and overtaken them. Tontian and Laozi were not bad, but they had lost 2 matches in a row. Primordial Venerate of Heaven felt much better after seeing this. At first, he had been vexed, angry, humiliated, and all sorts of negative emotions. However, he felt a little lucky now. He had not even fought and lost face, but at least he had not lost in front of so many people. But at least he didn't lose in front of so many people. Moreover, he didn't just lose face, he also lost his luck. It did not matter what Primordial Venerate of Heaven thought. Although Laozi and Tontian had lost 2 matches in a row, it was not the same as the previous match. The Poison Marquis and the others had tied in the previous match. In this match, they had won against Tontian and Laozi, but they had lost against the World Tree clone, Mosquito Dowrin, Hutu, and Ro. Damn it! The Poison Marquis and the others felt their hearts sink when they heard the final result. Out of the 3 matches, 1 had tied and 1 had lost. Even if they wanted to tie, they had to win the last match. Otherwise, they were doomed to fail. What if they failed? The Poison Marquis and the others felt a heart-wrenching pain when they thought of this result. Man proposes, God disposes. Before facing Desolation's side, they knew that they did not have the combat power of a mortal realm. Other than being a little afraid of Desolation's Hongjun Tiandao and Hongjun, they did not care about anyone else. With a balanced arena, even if Hongjun lost the match, it would not affect the overall situation. They would still win in the end. They had thought that they had nothing to worry about, but now they could only pay the price for their actions. They had not expected early-stage Primordial Chaos to be so impressive. The titles of Primordial Chaos had appeared one after another, which had refreshed their worldview. They could only watch the last match between mid-stage Primordial Chaos experts. This time, the Poison God Marquis, Madame Baiwa, and the Woodcutter were to participate. If not for the previous two matches, they would still be very confident. But now, they didn't even have a shred of confidence. Sure enough, when faced with Hongjun, Yang Mei, and Fang Qingshan, it was impossible for them to win. Even the strongest Poison God Marquis could not gain an advantage against them. Even Hongjun and Yang Mei's cultivation were suppressed. But they really didn't have the slightest advantage. Experience, divine abilities, numinous treasures, mystic arts. When they saw Fang Qingshan summon the timeless arc, the expressions of the Poison God Marquis and the others darkened. Didn't they say that the Pangu Chaos World was a newborn Chaos World, a remote place? How come there were so many titles popping up one after another? And now, there was even a good item like the Timeless Arc. The master of the Timeless Arc, regardless of his background or cultivation, was considered a respectable figure in the entire Boundless Void. As long as he didn't perish along the way, it would be too easy for him to become a powerhouse. Unfortunately, money couldn't buy one's foresight. Fortunately, even if they lost the challenge tournament, they would still gain much more than sending the news back. This was also the plan that the Poison God Marquis and the others had long planned. No matter what, they wouldn't lose out. Dong, dong, dong. The bell resounded in the arena, in the untainted land, and in the entire chaos of Pangu, covering the 9 heavens and 10 earths, as well as the countless grains of sand in the Ganges River. All living creatures could hear it clearly. The world war between the Pangu Chaos World and the lifeless Demon Palace and the Poison God Marquis. Below the Primordial Chaos, the first match ended in a draw. The early-stage Primordial Chaos and the mid-stage Primordial Chaos were both defeated by the Desolation. Since then, the Desolation has obtained the final victory. That familiar and imposing voice once again sounded in the void with a hint of joy. Why was he happy? In fact, it was very simple. The world was bustling for benefits, and the world was bustling for benefits. The Everlasting Lotus would also be gratified by the addition of the Timeless Arc and the advancement of the Timeless Arkansan naturally. The Great Tao was no exception. The Great Tao of Equalization had provided the venue for the battle. Although the others didn't know the complicated relationship between the two sides, there were definitely unknown benefits involved. Therefore, it was reasonable for the Great Tao of Equalization to be happy. Great! We've won. The people from the Boundless Void aren't that great after all. That's right, that's right. Following the announcement of the Great Tao of Equalization, everyone who was watching the battle became excited. A sense of pride that belonged to the Pangu Chaos World arose spontaneously. Whoosh! At the same time, since the challenge tournament had ended, the Great Tao of Equalization naturally returned to the arena. Everyone felt dizzy. Then, they appeared in the Desolation, and the entire arena turned into a stream of light and disappeared. Fang Qingshan and the others turned a blind eye to this, as it was time to truly enjoy the fruits of victory. Everyone's eyes were filled with anticipation towards this. After all, there was a secret technique to avoid the 5 signs of Deva and break through to the immortal realm. This was very important to Hongjun, Yang Mei, and other people who had reached the peak of the primordial chaos. Fang Qingshan, who had lofty ambitions, was also very ambitious. Once one broke through to the immortal realm, one would be considered a top figure in the boundless void and the myriad realms. Crack! Bang! Cracking sounds could be heard, followed by the sounds of the pillars collapsing one after another. This was because the divine poison marquis and the others had lost the challenge tournament, and their providence had been damaged. If someone with a high cultivation level and was good at observing providence were to look at the divine poison marquis and the others, they would be able to easily see that the pillars of providence above their heads, which had been like the sun at high noon, had been cut in half. The luck was distributed to the participants of the untainted land according to their contributions. Even if Fushi was defeated, Laozi and the others would also get some. It was just a matter of how much luck they got. Laozi and the others couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when they sensed that the luck they had lost earlier had returned. However, when they compared themselves to the Azura Sovereign and the others, the joy that had just risen in their hearts instantly vanished without a trace. Their displeasure was naturally matched by the ecstasy of the Shura Sovereign and the others. Previously, they had won the challenge tournament and the providence had been added to their bodies. They had already sensed the hope of breaking through. This time, the providence descended again. The providence above everyone's head surged and continuously absorbed a huge amount of providence. It rose rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few breaths, the evolved providence phenomenon had already blotted out the sky. Roar! In an instant, as if they had reached a certain limit or touched a shackle, these providence phenomena shook their bodies and shot up into the sky. Suddenly, they charged toward the void. Rumble. Halfway through, he was bound by a huge net that covered the sky. This net was none other than the primordial chaos bottleneck. Chapter 1250. As for the primordial chaos bottleneck, one would be able to sense it once they reached the peak of the Zenith Heaven realm. After all, there was no sage to be in the untainted land before Hongjun. However, although one could sense the primordial chaos bottleneck when they reached the peak of the Zenith Heaven realm, they could only observe it from afar. Although it seemed close, it was still far away. When one broke through to the peak of the Zenith Heaven realm, or even the lesser sage realm, the feeling would be much clearer, and one could even touch it. However, it was like seeing Mount Tai and seeing the world. If one didn't truly touch the bottleneck itself, one wouldn't know how solid this bottleneck was. Precisely because of this bottleneck could be said to have blocked 99% of the peak of the Zenith Heaven realm, preventing them from advancing. People as talented as Ancestral Dragon, Tai, Xinyuanzi, and the others could do nothing about it. No matter how powerful they were, and how many treasures they had, they could not break through this huge net. The binding force made them feel like fish in a net. They struggled continuously, but the more they struggled, the tighter the binding force became. Therefore, apart from the sky-supporting black tortoise, who was destined to fall in the future due to Hongjun Tiandao's scheme, Fang Qingshan, Mosquito Dowren, and the World Tree clone had spent a lot of effort to break through to the primordial chaos realm. Fang Qingshan used a primordial violet vapor. Mosquito Dowren used a connate cardinal treasure, and although the World Tree clone paid a smaller price, that was only relatively speaking. Coupled with the tree planted by the predecessors of Fang Qingshan and Mosquito Dowren, he was able to enjoy the shade. Otherwise, he could learn from the mistakes of Ancestral Dragon, Tai, and the others. Fortunately, at this moment, the heavens and the earth were on their side. They relied on the arena battles this time to gather the fame of the world and trample on their opponents to advance. Their karmic luck was vast like a dragon, and it allowed them to see hope of breaking through. They instantly exerted all their strength and charged towards the giant net of bottlenecks again and again. Rumble. All of a sudden, the 10 people below the primordial chaos, Fushi, Shura's Sovereign, Chiyu, and the others began to break through. It wasn't that they didn't want to find a quiet place, but the opportunity wouldn't come again. Now was the best time to break through. If they missed it, they might not have such a good opportunity again in their lifetime. As for whether there would be people with evil intentions who would try to sabotage it, they were not worried about this at all. What did it mean to have the strength of heaven and earth? Even if someone tried to sabotage them, they wouldn't succeed. Who knows, they might even be able to give them a helping hand. For a time, the wind and clouds surged, and the sky changed color. The momentum of Zhen Yuan Zi and the others was like the waves of the sea, wave after wave, higher than the previous one. The first spurt of energy, the second decline, the third exhaustion. At this time, everyone gave it their all. Providence, merit, secret techniques to break through to the primordial chaos realm, and so on. The 8 immortals crossing the sea displayed their respective divine abilities. Roar. The phenomenon evolved from providence, be it a dragon, a phoenix, a sword, a human, or something else, used all their means and suddenly appeared in front of the bottleneck net. They tore, slashed, or attacked with all their might. Fiercely try to finish the battle in one fell swoop and completely tear a hole in the huge, unbreakable net. Although it was just a providence charge, the power that erupted made everyone below the primordial chaos realm, including the Queen Mother, Jade Pool, and the Dragon Mother, who had been defeated in the Heavenly Road, retreat. This was because at this moment, the pressure on their bodies had actually surpassed the Lesser Sage realm and was almost comparable to the first stage primordial chaos realm. Infinite power, infinite potential, the gathering of people's hopes, and the support of the power of heaven and earth tore down crazily. The bottleneck net above their heads, which was as stable as Mount Tai, seemed like it would be torn into pieces in the next moment. In the past, the large net, which didn't even shake slightly, shook violently at this moment, and the lines that were constructed flickered. Good fellas, I didn't expect them to break through to the primordial chaos right after winning the challenge tournament. Although the opportunity on the Heavenly Road has long been mentioned that there would be an opportunity to break through to the primordial chaos realm, I didn't expect it to come so soon. If all of them break through to the primordial chaos realm, then the desolation will be lively. I'm afraid it's impossible for everyone to break through. Although everyone is breaking through the bottleneck together, there are differences in strength. Not bad, not bad. Those who have won the challenge tournament seem to have a more ferocious momentum, and their stamina is longer. The onlookers, who had been happy about the Desolation's victory in the challenge tournament, had not expected to see Chi Yu and the other 9 break through the primordial chaos realm bottleneck in the blink of an eye. One could imagine the excitement in their hearts. Such a grand occasion was rare in the Desolation. Back then, when sages came into the world, it was like a market. Regardless of how excited the others were, the 10 people involved were not in the mood to care about this at the moment. Their cultivation levels had long reached a point where there was no room for improvement. This time, they had used the secret technique to break through to the primordial chaos realm and the boundless providence to break through the bottleneck. However, this bottleneck was still not that easy to break through. Rumble. The bottleneck was constantly vibrating. It seemed as if it would break in the next moment. However, this was only the appearance. It seemed as if it would only happen in the next moment. In particular, Fuxi, Hao Ian, and the others who had failed before felt even more powerless, and their expressions were extremely ugly. If they could not break through such a good opportunity, not to mention whether they would have another chance in the future, it would undoubtedly be a disaster to their confidence. On the path of cultivation, although wealth, companionship, methods, and places were important, a person's temperament was equally important. There was only one great way, and only one great way. People who had no confidence in themselves would never go far. I don't believe that a mere bottleneck can stop me. Break, break, break! Everyone erupted with their strongest power almost at the same time. Tear it apart. Tear the bottleneck. Break the shackles. At the same time, in the Desolation, the Dragon Clan, the Scale Clan, the Star Clan, the beings favored by the stars, the Blood Sea Azura Clan, the Underworld, the Wu People's bloodline, and all other beings related to the 10 raised their fists to the sky and roared angrily, their eyes filled with unyielding faith. This was another effect of popularity. It could give others a helping hand. Although the effect might not be great, it could be the straw that broke the camel's back. Their hearts were united, and their wills were united. They directly erupted with the most persistent roar, filled with endless faith. It gathered directly on the Providence anomaly. It turned into endless power. The net of bottlenecks constantly shook. The light flickered. Whoosh! At this moment, a great joy rose in the hearts of everyone, including Fong Qingshan, Hong Jun, and Yang Mei. They were a little better, but everyone below the primordial chaos realm felt a great joy that came from their bloodline. They were so excited that they could not help but cry. Chapter 1251. What's going on? Why do I suddenly feel so happy? And why is this feeling so strong, as if it's coming from the depths of my soul? Before the first wave subsided, another wave arose. First, they had won the challenge tournament. Then, the Shura Sovereign and the others had broken through the bottleneck of the mixed essence realm. However, it was not over yet. The next moment, there was another wave of joy. Joy rose in everyone's hearts. Is it because of the victory in the challenge tournament? Or because a mixed essence realm is about to appear? Even if it's because of the victory in the challenge tournament, even if a mixed essence realm is about to appear, there's no need to do this. After all, a mixed essence realm is just a mixed essence realm. Even when the sages appeared one after another, there wasn't such a huge commotion. Yes, you should know that right now, it's not just one or two sages or two races or one world or two worlds. It's the entire goo chaotic world. All living beings and the entire world are rejoicing, singing, and celebrating. Auspicious signs have descended from the heavens, and heavenly sounds are echoing. But apart from these two reasons, I really can't think of any other reason for this. This kind of joy that came from the heart and the entire world was unprecedented. No one in the world could have such a special honor. Even when Daozu and Hong Jun had proven his Dao, he had not been qualified to do so. Sensing the changes in the world, countless cultivators no longer cared about the Shura Sovereign and the others who were using all their strength to break through. All kinds of speculations popped up like mushrooms after a rain. However, the phenomenon in the world did not diminish as people guessed. Instead, it grew bigger. After all living beings and the world rejoiced, the boundless phenomenon began to appear. Purple Chi, boundless purple Chi. It was not 3,000 miles, not 30,000 miles. Instead, it covered the sky and covered the earth. It was vast and boundless. The entire chaotic world seemed to be enveloped by the purple Chi. Heavenly sounds rang out. Magical conches were blown and drums were beaten. It made people's minds tremble and their minds become unprecedentedly clear. If one cultivated at this time, they would definitely get twice the result with half the effort. Then, in the purple gas, one could faintly see a majestic palace in the middle. Not to mention Demon Master Palace, Soaring Heaven King Palace, even Purple Cloud Palace and Pangu Palace paled in comparison. White jade as the stairs, pearls as the curtains, golden dragons coiling around the pearls, and a world tree as the beams. It was majestic, and resplendent. This grandeur, this aura, perhaps only the great path ring that had just disappeared could compare to it. This also meant that this was a treasure of the chaos supreme treasure level. Then, in the palace, the middle door opened, and two groups of golden boys and jade girls walked out. The jade girls held incense burners in their hands, and the golden boys held swords in their arms. There were also dragons and phoenixes dancing, jade rabbits and golden crows playing, and mystical lions and jade elephants running. Of course, these weren't true living beings, nor were they phenomena. They were manifestations of the Grand Tao laws. With the main hall as the center, boundless auspicious lights and auspicious chi spread out in all directions, enshrouding the surroundings with colorful auspicious lights. Golden lotuses bloomed one after another, with innumerable seal scripts flowing on the petals. Great Tao manifestation. Seeing this scene, others might still be confused, but Hong Jun and the others were very sure. Putting aside everything else, in the whole of desolation, in the entire chaos world, probably no one but the Great Path would be able to take out that palace. After all, even at the peak of the chaos world, there were only 4 chaos treasures. After the great trial of creation, all the chaos treasures were shattered. Sure enough, the following changes confirmed their guess. After the golden boys and jade girls, an eye flew out. Although everyone had seen the Eye of Death and the Hongjun Tiandao's eye before, compared to the eye in front of them, whether it was the Hongjun Tiandao's eye or the Eye of Death, they were obviously far inferior. In terms of size and quality, it was above the Eye of Death. In terms of agility and vitality, it was also above the Hongjun Tiandao's eye, and it was even more noble. Once it appeared, it was like the center of the world, and all things in the world worshipped it. The Eye of the Great Path. The entire eye was the color of glass, and there were countless mysterious divine chains of rule flashing constantly, flickering. It exuded endless majesty. The moment it appeared, countless living beings felt as if invisible shackles had been imposed on their bodies, and they were bearing great pressure. Even Hongjun was not an exception. Sensing this, Hongjun's expression changed. It was not that he had not felt the Great Path before. Previously, when the Poison Marquis and the others entered the Chaos world, the Great Path had taken the initiative to contact him. However, that was then, and this was now. Although the Great Path had made Hongjun feel supreme back then, it was in a state of serious injury, just like Yang Mei. At this moment, he could not even think of resisting. Sensing this change, Hongjun's heart sank. The joy of avoiding the Deva Decay and breaking through the immortal secret technique disappeared instantly. He had long been used to being the only one in the world. Now that the Great Path had appeared, it was like a sharp blade hanging over his head. How could Hongjun be happy? Hongjun felt this way, and so did Yang Mei. As a chaotic demon god, he had seen the Great Path before. Sensing the familiar aura, Yang Mei knew that the Great Path had also recovered. The Great Path had recovered because the Poison Marquis and the others had joined in. Although their cultivation levels were not very high, there were more than a dozen of them at the primordial chaos realm. They had also stirred up the entire chaos world, especially the immortal secret technique. Although the Great Path would not completely recover immediately, at least it would not be in a deep slumber for a long time. Hongjun Tiandao was heartless, but Hongjun Tiandao was impartial. Those who contributed would be rewarded. Regardless of how Hongjun, Yang Mei, and the others felt, the Eye of the Great Path took action after it appeared. Whoosh! All of a sudden, the Eye of the Great Path shot out beams of divine light, like pear blossoms in a storm. These divine lights quickly spread across the entire chaos world and entered the bodies of many living beings. This was not just for the participants in the arena, nor was it for the desolation. It was for the entire chaos world. The entire world was celebrating. The Great Path had recovered from its injuries, and because of the unprecedented prosperity of the arena. Therefore, the Great Path had sent boundless fortunes. Of course, it was impossible for everyone to be equal. Therefore, the fortunes were varied. Some were big, some were small. Some were bright, some were bright. Those who received the most were naturally the participants in the arena, followed by those with high cultivation levels and sufficient providence. As for the rest, they were merely basking in the light. Great Path empowerment. As the divine light descended, everyone shuddered. In an instant, everyone could not help but exclaim in their hearts. Of course, they only cried out in surprise in their hearts. Because after they came back to their senses, everyone simultaneously started to immerse themselves in the Grand Tao. If they missed such a great opportunity, it would be a waste, and they would be struck by lightning. Chapter 1252. The Great Tao Empowerment. Everyone had experienced such a creation before, and Fang Qingshan had experienced it more than once. In the desolation, when the Great Tao had gone into seclusion and Hongjun Tiandao had been born, the world had celebrated and boundless creation had descended. In the eternal world, at the last moment of the God-Fiend battlefield, the primordial myriad spirit list had also bestowed boundless creation according to the rankings. After the timeless arc had advanced, the everlasting lotus's blessing had been a similar thing. However, whether it was the world's celebration in the desolation or the Eternal Kingdom's Providence Award, they were a far cry from the great Tao empowerment at the moment. After all, they were at different levels. The difference between Hongjun Tiandao and the great Tao was too great. The level in the God-Fiend battlefield in the Eternal Kingdom was not weaker than the great Tao, but the cultivation level of the participants was too low, so the rewards they received were naturally lower. However, the eternal blessing that the timeless ark had obtained when it had advanced to the supreme realm was almost on par with this. After the great Tao creation power entered the bodies of all living beings, it had a significant effect on early-stage primordial chaos and even mid-stage primordial chaos. Of course, late-stage primordial chaos and peak primordial chaos, such as Hongjun and Yangmei, did not have much effect. They just felt refreshed, which was better than nothing. Putting aside its effect on others, this power of creation was like a timely rain for Shura's sovereign and the others who were breaking through to the primordial chaos. However, when they saw the power of creation enter their bodies, especially how Tion and the others who had been defeated in the arena battles earlier, they felt weak. They had the will, but not the strength, as if they were about to fail in their breakthrough again. The boost from the power of creation was like a shot of adrenaline. They immediately felt that the power of providence had strengthened and the follow-up force was continuous. It was more powerful and effective in breaking through the net of bottlenecks. The surrounding essence chi of heaven and earth, and even the Tao runes of heaven and earth were completely open to them. It seemed that there was nothing hidden at this moment. It was completely exposed in front of them. Most importantly, although the net of bottlenecks did not become weaker, it was because they had comprehended more and gained more power, while the net of bottlenecks did not change. As a result, it became much easier for them to break through the bottlenecks. Everyone had already reached the half-step primordial chaos level. Coupled with the blessing of providence from the arena competition, the support of popularity, and the adjustment of mystic techniques, this Tao creation was finally the straw that broke the camel's back. Kacha. However, there was a slight sound. If one did not pay close attention, they would not be able to hear it, but it became the signal of victory. One of the ropes on the net of bottlenecks snapped, and a chain reaction ensued. Ropes snapped one after another, and in the end, the entire net of bottlenecks was completely torn apart. Without the bottleneck and shackles, it would be a smooth journey for him. In an instant, a pressure that surpassed the pinnacle of sage-to-be and quasi-sage, a pressure unique to chaotic prime, emerged. Breakthrough. The first to break through was the Shura sovereign. His foundation was the deepest among all of them. He had the bloodline of Mosquito Dauren, a mid-stage primordial chaos expert, and he cultivated the Blood Sea Sutra, a cultivation technique that led straight to immortality. As the master of Azura Tao, the son of Providence in the North Continent, the emperor of the Azura lineage, and the heir of the Blood Sea, his providence was unparalleled. The Shura sovereign's breakthrough was like a domino that had been knocked down. Pulling one hair would cause a chain reaction. Qi followed closely, followed by Xianwang, Xinyuanzi. Even Hao Yin and the others enjoyed the glory. A tyrannical aura and the aura of chaotic prime suddenly appeared, and boundless essence chi of heaven and earth rolled over. Chaotic primordial chaos was different from sages. Moreover, even sages had been chased into the chaos by Hongjun Tiandao because they had caused too much commotion during the desolation. Now that the Shura sovereign and the others had broken through together, they had absorbed so much essence chi of heaven and earth that the entire desolation was affected. Whoosh! The 10 of them only felt dizzy. In the next moment, they appeared in the chaos. This was because they had strong providence, had just one glory for the desolation, had the Tao, and had Hongjuan's promise. Otherwise, that would have been enough to make them suffer. Ha ha ha! The heavens have not let me down. I have finally broken through. Yes. How many years has it been? I was about to give up. I didn't expect that I would break through. Primordial chaos. Is this primordial chaos? Everyone below sages is an ant. From today onward, My fate is finally in my own hands." Hao Yin and the others were so happy that they cried. As they had said, some of them had even given up on the idea of breaking through. They had not expected happiness to come so suddenly. Of course, although the 10 of them had broken through, it was not the same. For example, the Shura sovereign and the others had broken through more easily than Hao Yin and the others. After breaking through, their standards were naturally higher. Hao Yin and the others had barely broken through to primordial chaos, while Xinyuanzi and the others had already reached the late stage of first stage primordial chaos. However, at this time, Hao Yin and the others did not care about these details at all. As long as they could break through to primordial chaos, their future cultivation would not be too far ahead. In general, this time, Hao Yin and the others had gained the most benefits. Of course, this did not mean that the others had not benefited, especially the early stage primordial chaos and the others who had participated in the arena competition. However, Laozi, Tongtian, and the others had lost providence because they had failed in the arena competition. The overall victory and the increase in providence meant that their gains were not as great. As for Mosquito Dowrin and the others, their cultivation levels were too high. Although they had made progress, their progress had not been as great as the Shura Sovereign and the others, who had broken through the bottleneck. Even so, apart from Hong Jun and Yang Mei, they had still benefited a lot. In particular, the World Tree clone had the lowest cultivation level among all the primordial chaos people. Although his combat power was strong, it could not change the fact that he was only at the first stage primordial chaos. Therefore, with the help of the providence and the power of creation of the great Tao, he had benefited the most. The primordial world law had become more perfect, and its operation speed had increased by 50%. It had become more complicated, and the 3,000 great Tao and the one essence minor Tao had all improved. His Dharma power had been purified, his principal spirit had been refined, and his physical body had been strengthened. The primordial world law was a cultivation technique that the World Tree clone had concluded after breaking through to primordial chaos. Fang Qingshan had the All Heavens Tao verification art, Mosquito Dowrin had the Bloodsea Sutra, and the World Tree clone naturally had the primordial world law. Although the name sounded a little arrogant, this was just a hope. It was still necessary to have an ideal. What if it came true? Putting all this aside, the World Tree clone was limited by the fact that each breakthrough needed to be too comprehensive. Although it had not achieved much of a breakthrough, it had used this opportunity to directly break through from the first stage primordial chaos to the second stage primordial chaos and reach the third stage primordial chaos. Essence, chi, spirit, divine powers, nomological laws, and so on had increased in quantity, quality, and power. In terms of combat power, the current World Tree clone was enough to beat his previous self. Chapter 1253. The Blood Sea in the Small World of the Blood Sea. Fang Qingshan sat in the center of the hall, with Mosquito Dowrin and the World Tree clone sitting on his left and right. Below him stood the newly promoted Azura Emperor of the Primordial Chaos and the last of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors of the human race, Yu the Great, who was also the sky supporting Black Tortoise. Ancestor, are you really leaving? Although he had long known that Fang Qingshan and the others were going to leave the desolation, the Azura Emperor was still full of reluctance when the day really came. Scenes from his birth could not help but appear in his mind. Mosquito Dowrin created the Azura race, and the Azura bloodline and the Wu people entered the underworld together. For him, Fang Qingshan helped him snatch the Emperor, the teacher of the human sovereign, and helped him purify the North Continent. The past seemed like it was yesterday. Yes, it's time to go. Fang Qingshan nodded, looked around, and took a deep breath. This was his old nest in the desolation, and it was also the place where he really rose. However, like the immortal world, the 3 kingdoms world, the journey to the West world, and the world of gods, this could be a stop on his life journey. After all, he was just a passerby, not a person who had returned. He belonged to the heavens. Maybe one day he would stop, but at that time, there would only be one possibility, and that was eternity. Or there was another possibility, and that was to fall on the path of pursuing the Tao and collapse halfway. You are now also a person of the primordial chaos, the master of the blood sea, the master of the six paths of reincarnation, and the black tortoise has the sky's supporting pillar and is also the human sovereign. Breaking through to the sage realm is only a matter of time. As long as you don't court death, plus there is still Hutu and the Wu people, the most important thing is that as long as there is no news of my death, you will be safe until you are strong enough. Okay, I'll leave everything here to you. I hope to hear news of you in the infinite void and the heavens in the future. We will meet again if fate allows it. Fang Qingshan was also a person who did not like to drag things out and was not used to parting. As soon as he finished speaking, the three of them disappeared from their seats at the same time. 3 streaks of light flew out of the world's barrier in the blink of an eye. Don't worry, ancestor. That day will come. We'll follow in your footsteps and walk the path you've walked before. Sure as Sovereign and Black Tortoise thought to themselves at the same time. Phew, they finally left. Fang Qingshan's departure did not cause a huge commotion, nor did he deliberately conceal it. Everything that should be known was known. For a moment, everyone's hearts were filled with complicated feelings. There was regret and reluctance, such as Hutu, Chiyu, and Ro. The former was because they were allies and got along well with each other and helped a lot. The latter was because Fang Qingshan and the others were there to restrain Hongjun. Otherwise, it would not be easy for the devil cult to develop if the celestial sect dominated. There was hatred, such as Nuwa and the heavenly lord of Yuanshu. Not to mention the former. She was the first saint to be killed by Fang Qingshan. The latter, on the other hand, had lost face and opportunities because of the World Tree's clone. As a result, there was a certain gap between him and Laozi and Tong Tian. There was envy. After knowing the existence of the infinite void from the divine Poison Marquis and the others, as long as they were not the kind of people who muddled along, they all hoped to go out and have a look. However, the infinite void was too dangerous, and it was not so easy to travel. Moreover, even Hongjun would not be willing to go there. One had to know that Fang Qingshan and the others had succeeded by threatening and tempting them. And, however, more people heaved a sigh of relief. From Hongjun to Hao Yin and the others, who had just broken through, they all heaved a sigh of relief. Indeed, Fang Qingshan and the others had put too much pressure on them. Only Hongjun, who heaved a sigh of relief, did not want Fang Qingshan and the others to leave. It was not that he wanted to go back on his word and break his promise to make Fang Qingshan and the others stay. Instead, it was because the situation had changed. Once again, something uncontrollable had appeared. Hongjun had not expected that after the end of the arena competition, although everyone had more or less gained a lot of benefits, it had also revived the Great Path. How could one allow others to sleep on one's bed? That was why Hongjun had wanted to get rid of Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei. Now, because of the appearance of the Great Path, Hongjun felt like a sharp blade was hanging over his head, especially when he was about to break through to the immortal realm. One should know that Pangu was in the same situation back then. He wasn't afraid to speculate about the Great Path in the worst way possible. During the trial of creation back then, the Great Path must have played a dishonorable role. He was afraid that he would follow in Pangu's footsteps. Therefore, he hoped that Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei would stay and fight the Great Path with him. At the very least, they could restrain it. However, at the same time, he knew that was impossible. Therefore, in the end, he merely sighed deeply and immersed himself in the secret technique of the immortal realm. At the end of the day, strength was still the most important factor. Phew! After leaving the world's barrier, Fang Qingshan, Mosquito Daoran, and Huan Yu stood still. When they turned around, they felt nostalgic. What's wrong? Just at this moment, a familiar voice rang out. Raising his eyebrows, he walked over with large strides. A little. Fang Qingshan nodded. After leaving today, I don't know when I'll be able to return. When I do, I'm afraid things will be different. Therefore, There's only one great path, and the great path walks alone. When Yang Mei heard this, she let out a deep sigh. Oh well, it's been a long time since I've felt this emotional. Could it be that the older I am, the more cowardly I become? Fang Qingshan sorted out his emotions and laughed. Let's go, let's go. There are more exciting worlds out there waiting for us. There's no need to be sad here. Then, Fang Qingshan took out the timeless Arkansas whoosh. A beam of light descended and brought Fang Qingshan and the others to the deck. My God, every time I see the timeless arc, I can't help but be envious of you. Yang Mei sighed. How long had it been since the timeless arc became a supreme? Raising his brows, he realized that the eternal heavenly vessel was already on the verge of evolving once more. Once the eternal heavenly vessel reached the utmost exalted level, Fang Qingshan might really be able to stand on equal footing with him, or perhaps even surpass him. What's mine, old ancestor, can't be envious. What's yours, old ancestor? How can I not be envious? Fang Qingshan said with a smile as he piloted the timeless arc out of the primal chaos. Although the primal chaos was vast, with the speed of the timeless arc, it didn't take long for them to reach the edge of the primal chaos. This time, because they had paid a certain price to learn about the wormhole from the Poison Marquis and the others, Fang Qingshan and the others did not take the same path as Yang Mei when they left the primal chaos. Instead, they took the path that the Poison Marquis and the others had come from. This was because if they took this path and passed through the wormhole, there would be a great world nearby. If they took the same path as Yang Mei, the road ahead would be unknown. Chapter 1254. Fang Qingshan steered the timeless arc and traveled in the chaos for more than half a month before he finally arrived at the wormhole that the divine Poison Marquis and the others had told him about. This is the wormhole spatial passageway. On the deck, Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei looked ahead carefully. Fang Qingshan and the others had learned from the divine Poison Marquis and the others that there were only 4 ways to travel in the boundless void. One was to rely on oneself and use the escape light supernormal ability. However, this method was not common. Even if ordinary people used the escape light supernormal ability, the effect would not be very good. On one hand, the speed was not fast and the void was too big. On the other hand, it was dangerous. After all, the boundless void was not a friendly place. Although the ordinary people here were already primordial chaos experts, it was very dangerous for those below the peak primordial chaos realm, let alone ordinary primordial chaos experts. As for those with high cultivation levels, they definitely had all kinds of priceless treasures and did not need to rely on themselves to travel, unless they were the kind of ascetic existence. Otherwise, there were simpler, more comfortable, and faster methods. Any normal person would know how to choose. In addition to relying on oneself, there was also a void spacecraft like the Timeless Arkansas. However, under normal circumstances, a void spacecraft could not compare to Fang Qingshan's Timeless Arkansas. It was not just a matter of grade and quality, but also a matter of foundation. After all, the Timeless Ark was not an ordinary item in the entire boundless void and the various realms. If an ordinary person could obtain such an item, he could immediately become a true lineage disciple of a major power that ranked in the top 100 great realms. In addition, there was also a teleportation array and a void wormhole. However, these 2 things were not common. The main reason was that the Chaos Teleportation Array consumed too much energy to activate. Ordinary immortal realm experts could not bear it. The void wormhole, on the other hand, completely depended on the opportunity. If the opportunity was good, even early-stage primordial chaos experts could encounter it. If the opportunity was not good, even immortal realm experts could not encounter it. The divine Poison Marquis and the others also had some opportunities. Not only had they encountered a void wormhole, but they had also used it to find an undeveloped chaotic world like the Pan-Gu chaotic world. What a void wormhole! He looked at the vortex in front of him that looked like a cave entrance. Yang Mei could not help but sigh from the bottom of his heart. If the Poison God Marquis and the others had not informed them of the specific location, they would have subconsciously overlooked the existence of this place. Firstly, the wormhole didn't look very impressive from the outside. Secondly, it had an innate ability to conceal itself, causing people to unknowingly overlook its location. Of course, what made Yang Mei even more emotional was the spatial laws contained in the wormhole. If it weren't for the fact that he still had a little rationality left, he would have pounced on her, and his eyes couldn't hide the splendor in them. If he could comprehend this wormhole, not to mention the whole thing, even a small part of it would be enough for his cultivation base to advance greatly. If he could comprehend a few levels, he wouldn't need to use the secret technique to break through to the immortal realm, but he could naturally break through to the immortal realm. Unfortunately, although the wormhole was naturally formed, it was caused by the vibration of the void essence's laws of space, and coincidentally encountered a void beast, the void wormhole, which directly bit through the weakened void due to the vibration of space, thereby opening up a passage connecting the two places. Although the wormhole contained an endless great path of space, it wouldn't have been able to travel so far so easily otherwise. However, the discovery of a wormhole depended on luck, not only because the formation of a wormhole depended on luck. It was also because once a wormhole was opened, it would be extremely secretive. Without special divine abilities, supreme treasures, or special constitutions, even great mediums would not be able to track it and find its specific location. Just like what Yang Mei had just said, if it weren't for the information provided by the Poison God Marquis and the others, even if they walked past the wormhole, they probably wouldn't have discovered his existence. Because of this, although the wormhole contained a strong, great path of space, without special means, it was impossible to comprehend it. Otherwise, the wormhole wouldn't have been so difficult to discover. What a pity, what a pity! Yang Mei couldn't help but sigh. It felt like entering a treasure mountain and returning empty-handed. The feeling of looking at the most important treasure in front of one's eyes, but not being able to obtain, it was simply exhilarating. It's indeed a pity. Fang Qingshan also sighed. However, the contents of their sighs were completely different. He raised his eyebrows and sighed, because he could not comprehend the great Tao of space from it. After all, he was a space demon god, one of the 3,000 demon gods in the Panga-chaotic world. He cultivated the great Tao of space. Once he comprehended the wormhole, it would be a piece of cake for him to rise to the top. However, Fang Qingshan wasn't just sighing because of the great path of space. If he could comprehend the great path of space, it wouldn't be very useful to Fang Qingshan and Mosquito Daoran, but it would be different for the World Tree clone. After all, the great path of space was one of the strongest components of the world Tao. He was also sighing because of the benefits of the wormhole. Compared to teleportation arrays and ships, the advantages of the wormhole were too great. First of all, he didn't need to consume any energy. He seemed to be borrowing the power of the void space origin. Secondly, he was very safe and wouldn't encounter any natural or man-made disasters in the void. In addition, he was also the fastest. Although time wouldn't stop when he entered the wormhole, he could save at least half of the time compared to teleportation arrays. Therefore, the wormhole was a strategic resource. Once a wormhole was discovered, as long as one was willing to make a move, they would definitely be able to obtain unimaginable wealth. It wouldn't be too difficult to create an immortal expert with such wealth. Wealth, companionship, method, and land. Among the 4 elements of cultivation, wealth was the most important. Especially for Fang Qingshan, wealth was even more important. After all, whether it was himself, his 2 clones, or the advancement of the Timeless Arc, they were all big eaters. If he didn't have abundant wealth and cultivated step by step, how could he have broken through to the primordial chaos realm so quickly? Unfortunately, Fang Qingshan couldn't take the initiative to expose the wormhole. Once the wormhole was exposed, the Pan-Goose chaotic world would also be exposed, which would indirectly violate his promise. Once he violated his promise, even if Fang Qingshan could guarantee that he wouldn't die, he would have to pay a heavy price. This heavy price was far higher than the benefits of exposing the wormhole. Therefore, Fang Qingshan sighed. All right, out of sight, out of mind. Let's go. Fang Qingshan said to Yang Mei, and then activated the timeless arc, which turned into a stream of light and rushed into the wormhole. As soon as they got close to the wormhole, they saw that the originally ordinary place was suddenly like the calm surface of a lake being blown by a breeze, causing ripples to appear. Then, like a gluttonous mouth, it instantly swallowed the timeless arc and saw. Then, everything returned to normal. If Fang Qingshan and the timeless arc hadn't disappeared, those who didn't know would have thought that nothing had happened. Chapter 1255. This is the Void Wormhole. After entering the wormhole, Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei quickly adjusted themselves after the initial discomfort. Looking at the scene in front of them, they sighed again. It was a completely different world. There was the sun and the moon in the pot, and the universe in the palm. This wormhole was like that. Although the wormhole looked like a cave from the outside, it was like a mustard seed on the inside. The entire wormhole was like the 9-turn yellow river array in Fang Qingshan's eternal divine furnace unit, with 9 twists and 18 turns. Circles of ripples appeared around the wormhole, flickering with beautiful, dreamy colors. At a glance, it was a colorful scene, compared to outside the wormhole, where one could feel the powerful space great path but could only observe it from afar and not comprehend it. The space great path in the wormhole was like the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It was endless and filled the surroundings. It was as if a casual breath would cause the space great path to roll over. If one could stay in the wormhole, not to mention comprehending it, they would definitely be able to make rapid progress under the subtle influence. However, this idea was still unrealistic. If one wanted to comprehend it here, they would first have to stay in the wormhole. However, once they entered the wormhole, they would no longer be able to control their own bodies. Although the wormhole looked like a cave, it wasn't one. You couldn't stop and walk as you wished. Once you entered, you would be enveloped by a formless spatial power and teleported away. As mentioned earlier, the wormhole speed was much faster than a chaos-level teleportation array. Although the wormhole seemed to be exceptionally long, because of the folding of space, distortion, and other reasons, it could be said to be full of twists and turns. It seemed to be extremely far away. However, after the timeless arc entered it, there was no need for the timeless arc to fly. In other words, the speed of the timeless arc's flight could not keep up with the speed of the wormhole space origin. As a result, Fang Qingshan, who was the owner of the sky vessel, felt an unprecedented pulling force pulling him forward at lightning speed. This kind of power was even more terrifying than the power he had felt in the Great Path Arena. That was because he could still resist that kind of power, but here, he could only go with the flow. Because if there was any resistance against the power of this place, it would most likely cause a backlash in an instant. The recoil was so powerful that, not to mention a normal void ship, even an elite void ship and an ordinary undying realm expert would instantly disintegrate on the spot. If they wanted to resist this force, they had to be at least at the immortal realm. Moreover, they shouldn't be at the early stage of immortal realm, but at the late stage. However, if such an existence did not specialize in the law of space, the attraction of the wormhole would not be too great for them. Because of this, you wouldn't be given the time to stop and slowly comprehend the space Tao charm here. Unless you had a special method to imprint all the space Tao charm here and bring it back to slowly comprehend it, this was just a very special journey. Therefore, although wormholes could be used as strategic resources and were extremely valuable, they could only be used as teleportation arrays. It was somewhat difficult to use them as a sacred space for enlightenment. However, if a certain price was paid, it was not impossible. It was just that those who could pay the price would not be interested in him, and those who could not pay the price could only watch. After saying so much, everything actually happened in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint. In almost a 1/1,000,000th of an instant, the timeless arc, wrapped in the power of the wormhole space origin, instantly traversed countless spaces and was already far away from the Pan-Gu chaos world. This distance was probably even greater than the distance that Yang Mei had traveled in the past. At a certain moment, a light flashed, before Fang Qingshan and the others could react. Whoosh! Fang Qingshan only felt his body lighten. The power that had wrapped around the timeless arc and bound him instantly disappeared. It was so fast that no one could react. It was so fast that it felt like this was not a wormhole at all, but a flash of a door. One step in, and they had already left. We're out. Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei still seemed somewhat in disbelief. However, when they reacted and sensed the distance between them and the Pangu Chaos world, they discovered that they could no longer sense it at all. In other words, in just a short moment, they had already left the Pangu Chaos world far behind. Fang Qingshan secretly calculated the distance and immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. Good heavens, in just a moment, it was almost equivalent to the timeless arc flying at full power without rest for 100 years, or even more. This wormhole could save the eternal heavenly ship close to 100 years of time. It was equivalent to the eternal heavenly ship not sleeping or resting for 100 years. Without any delay, it would be reduced to less than a millionth of a second. It could be imagined how shocking the value of a wormhole was, and how inconceivable the benefits it brought were. It was no wonder that wormholes were treated as strategic resources. If one wanted to get rich, one had to first build roads. Being able to quickly move around was an indispensable condition for a faction to rise. A large part of the reason why the Barbarian Land was called the Barbarian Land was because the roads there were obstructions. Once a faction obtained a wormhole and made good use of it, it was only a matter of time before they rose to power. Even if they could not make use of it, they could directly sell it. It would not be difficult for them to cultivate an immortal realm expert. How is this possible? Just as Fang Qingshan calculated the time and distance, he suddenly discovered a strange place. This was because he had just lost the imprint he left in the Pangu Chaos world. This was actually not that strange. After all, it was so far away, it was normal to not be able to sense it. For example, Yang Mei did not make a fuss. However, Fang Qingshan was different. Not only had his imprint disappeared, but more importantly, the coordinates he left on the Zhodian star map and the universal chessboard had completely lost their effect. This could not help but make Fang Qingshan turn pale with fright. In particular, the imprint on the universal chessboard could open a void passage wherever Fang Qingshan went as long as he had enough providence. Even though the distance was too far now, the universal chessboard was not what it used to be. It could directly cross two chaos worlds. However, at this moment, Fang Qingshan discovered that the coordinates of all the worlds he had been to had lost their effect. He could not sense them at all. Even with the universal chessboard, he could not open a passage to return. In other words, from this moment on, he had truly become a homeless wanderer. What's wrong? Seeing Fang Qingshan's expression change, Yang Mei raised his white eyebrows and asked curiously, I can no longer sense the coordinates of the Pangu Chaos world. Fang Qingshan said in a deep voice, You can't sense it? Isn't it normal that you can't sense it from such a distance? Yang Mei was somewhat puzzled. Chapter 12:56. It's not the same. Hearing this, Fang Qingshan smiled bitterly and shook his head. I dare say that even if we return to where we came from through the wormhole, we won't be able to find Pangu's chaotic world easily. HM? Hearing this, Yang Mei was instantly shocked. How is that possible? They had left a mark in Pangu's chaotic world, which could be discovered as long as they approached. Even without the mark, the poison mark he and the others had easily found Pangu's chaotic world after exiting the wormhole. If others could do it, why couldn't they? Even now, Yang Mei hadn't realized how serious the problem was. He only thought that the reason he couldn't sense his hometown was because it was too far away. Yes, how is that possible? However, if Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei knew what had happened after they left the chaotic world, they wouldn't be surprised. As the saying went, one must not harm others, but one must guard against others. What Fang Qingshan didn't know was that after he and Yang May left the chaotic world. The origin will of the Great Path had concealed the entire chaotic world. Just like a wormhole, without special means or knowing its exact location. One wouldn't be able to sense its existence even if they approached it. He would miss the opportunity to do so. After the origin will of the Great Path took action, the situation was the same. It was as if it had used some sort of concealment method, such that one couldn't calculate its exact location. Fang Qingshan had once sworn a Great Path oath that he wouldn't directly or indirectly reveal any information about Pan Gu's chaotic world, even though the Great Path of Hongjun was indifferent to their departure. Even though Yang Mei, Fang Qingshan, and the others' cultivation levels weren't low. Even though, however, if it was possible, who would be willing to entrust their safety to someone else? The infinite void was too dangerous. One had to be a primordial chaos expert, at the very least. No one dared to say they were safe before becoming an immortal. Plus, if luck wasn't on their side, even an immortal might fail miserably. Because of this, the cultivation levels of Yang Mei and the others weren't worth mentioning. Hence, just like what Hongjun was worried about earlier, sometimes, even if you didn't reveal it yourself, what if you were captured and your soul was searched by others? Plus, a Great Path oath might be able to avoid it. The will of the Great Path had the same thoughts as Hongjun. They did not wish for cultivators from the outside to enter the chaotic world, because once such a situation occurred, their interests would be harmed. They had both treated the chaotic world and the untainted land as their exclusive territories, and they would absolutely not allow anyone to have a share of the profits. Actually, it was easy to divide the cake. What they were afraid of was that they wouldn't even be able to guarantee their own safety. After all, who knew what kind of people would be attracted by the news? It would be fine if it was a primordial chaos expert or an ordinary immortal. But what if it was someone more powerful, like a god emperor? At that time, they wouldn't be able to win. In the best case, they would just lose control of the chaos desolation and lose a portion of their benefits. In the worst case, they might become prisoners or even face the danger of dying. It was better to prepare for a rainy day than to nip it in the bud. Therefore, after Fang Qingshan left the chaos, the origin of the Great Path will of the Great Path used a major superpower to seal the entire chaos world. Under such circumstances, even if they came to the vicinity through the wormhole again, without special means or the strength of an immortal, they wouldn't be able to sense anything. Is it really that serious? Why don't we return to the wormhole to take a look? It won't take much time anyway. Hearing Fang Qingshan's seriousness, Yang Mei felt a little uneasy. Although he was willing to roam the heavens, the chaos world wasn't just his lair. It was his home, and it was also his escape route. Now that he couldn't contact it, he couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. Return to the wormhole. Hearing this suggestion, Fang Qingshan's mind suddenly flashed. He seemed to have grasped something, but also seemed to have grasped nothing at the same time. However, at this moment, just as Fang Qingshan was distracted by the fact that he couldn't sense the chaos desolation and acted on Yang Mei's suggestion, he felt a sudden impulse in his heart. Wormhole, wormhole, wormhole. Fang Qingshan's eyes suddenly widened like copper bells. Oh no, let's go. Without much time to think, Fang Qingshan instinctively pushed the timeless arc to its maximum speed. The sails fluttered, and the Permitha boat was supported. The entire timeless arc flew into the distance at top speed. The next moment, a huge hole suddenly appeared in the ground. With the original wormhole as the center, it turned into a boundless black hole that engulfed the entire area. Rumble. The black hole was pitch black, and it was spinning at an extremely fast speed in one direction. It was twisting and turning, exploding with an unprecedented devouring power. Wherever the power of the black hole went, whether it was void rocks, void laws, or void creatures, everything was devoured cleanly. In the blink of an eye, everything was turned into nothingness. Although Fang Qingshan's reaction was fast, and although the timeless arc was fast, they still couldn't completely escape from the aftershock. Fortunately, the timeless arc's defense was amazing. The great void god armor automatically appeared above the timeless Arkansas. Therefore, other than being sent flying hundreds of thousands of feet and shaking a little, there was no damage. Even so, it was enough to make Fong Qingshan and the rest feel a lingering fear. Damn, almost got sucked in. Thinking of the consequences, they couldn't help but shudder. Fong Qingshan and Yang Mei's expressions were extremely ugly. Damn, the wormhole had obviously been destroyed. If they hadn't reacted quickly, they would have been sucked into the black hole. Even if they could survive, they would definitely have been seriously injured and used up some of their trump cards. More importantly, if they were sucked into the black hole, even if they survived, they would be exiled into the void. By then, the information they got from the god of poison Marquis and the rest would not be of much use. The boundless void was too big, and there were natural and man-made disasters everywhere. Once they were exiled into the void and didn't find a new world or a new route in time, not to mention the various changes in the void, just the loneliness alone was enough to drive them crazy. This was secondary. More importantly, the wormhole had been destroyed. It would be difficult for them to return to the Pan-Gu chaotic world, especially after they lost the brand of that world. They would probably never be able to return in this lifetime. I should have thought of this. At this moment, Fong Qingshan's face was full of regret. Before they left the chaotic world, they should have been mentally prepared for all of this. It was just that they had thought that they had sworn a great Dao oath and everything would be fine. They hadn't expected Hong Jun and Great Dao to be so ruthless. Not only did they cut off the brand, but they had also destroyed the wormhole. However, if they were in their shoes, they would have made the same choice as Hong Jun and Great Dao. It didn't make sense that after sealing the chaotic space, they would still allow a wormhole to remain by their side. Chapter 12:57. Although wormholes were good, they were strategic resources with extremely high value. Not to mention ordinary people, even major factions would treasure them. However, a man's wealth was his own ruin. At the end of the day, only strength could guarantee everything. Without strength, one would only be courting disaster. The Pan-Gu Chaos world clearly did not have the strength to guard such a wormhole. Not only did it not have the strength to guard it, but it also could not expose its location. Thus, it could not even be sold. The best method was to bear the pain and directly destroy it. Although it was a bit of waste, it was the safest method. Otherwise, even if Fong Qingshan and the others did not expose themselves, since the poison god Marquis and the others had coincidentally found this place and then used the wormhole to enter the Pan-Gu Chaos world, no one could guarantee that there would not be others. Thus, taking drastic measures was the only way to cut off the source of disaster. You have to be willing, you have to be willing, you have to be willing. Even so, if it did not concern them, they would naturally be in chaos. When it did not happen to them, they could naturally calmly and objectively discuss it. They could even stand on the vantage point of justice and criticize others. However, once it happened to them, it was somewhat difficult to accept it calmly. Fong Daoist, what do we do next? Yang Mei asked somewhat bitterly. Back then, he had roamed the immeasurable void. It was this path of retreat that allowed him to not suffer too much damage. Now that the wormhole had been destroyed and the brand had disappeared, this path of retreat had been completely destroyed. Even with Yang Mei's temperament, it was difficult for him to accept it immediately. What do we do? Of course, proceed according to the original plan. Fong Qingshan took a deep breath, calmed himself down, and said in a deep voice, "What we lose, we gain. This is good. Although we've cut off our path of retreat, it's not like we're not fighting with our backs against the wall. This will further strengthen our beliefs. We no longer have a path of retreat. That's right. Blessings are accompanied by misfortunes, and misfortunes are accompanied by blessings. Perhaps this matter will help us." At this point, Yang Mei could only comfort himself this way. After calming themselves down, the two finally had the mood to examine their new surroundings. If one looked at the immeasurable void from all angles, one could see it as a Milky Way, with various chaos worlds and desolation worlds as planets of varying sizes. But from a partial perspective, it was barren and dark. Especially in the distance, it was like the mouth of a Taotai. It seemed to contain extremely profound secrets, and also seemed to contain incomparable danger. That mystery kept attracting Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei. The desire to explore, it grew from the depths of their hearts, and they wanted to take action for it. However, they instinctively knew that they needed to curb their desires and impulses. That was because even though their strength wasn't bad, and they weren't considered to be at the bottom, their current strength was still insufficient to truly explore the boundless void. If he wanted to traverse the boundless void freely, he would have to at least reach Sempiternal Realm. Only then would he be qualified to do so. Right now, he could only obediently follow the route provided by the poison god Marquis and the others. He did not dare to deviate in the slightest. Otherwise, it would be very easy for unknown dangers to appear. Phew, let's go. After taking a deep breath, Fang Qingshan turned to Yang Mei and prepared to pilot the timeless ark to the nearest chaos world according to the star map he had obtained from the poison god Marquis. Even though it was the nearest chaos world, it would still take him about a year to get there, even if he flew without sleep or rest using the timeless Arkansas. Compared to a chaos world, the immeasurable void was still too vast, especially since he was still at the edge of the immeasurable void. If he wanted to reach the center of the universe, which was one of the top 100 chaos worlds, he would need millions or even tens of millions of years to reach it if he just flew slowly using the supreme, timeless Arkansas. Setting that aside, Fang Qingshan used the compass technique. This was one of the most widely circulated secret techniques in the immeasurable void. Even though it wasn't a high grade, it was extremely practical. Naturally, it was used to determine one's direction. Without this technique, it was very easy to get lost. Even with a map, it was easy to set a fixed path. After all, the immeasurable void wasn't that peaceful. Who knew if something unexpected would happen? After determining the direction, just as he was about to follow the map, something strange happened. From the corner of his eye, he saw a pitch-black figure flash before Fang Qingshan's eyes like a ray of light. Then it rapidly approached. At the same time, the book of Luo river diagram within the timeless arc revolved wildly, displaying a very bad divination. Fang Qingshan, Yang Mei, and the others were all shocked. Just like when the wormhole had exploded, they felt a prickling sensation on their backs, like a fishbone stuck in their throats. At the same time, an extreme sense of danger assaulted them, rushing straight into the depths of their hearts and causing alarm bells to ring. Damn it! Blessings don't come in pairs, but misfortune never comes alone. Fang Qingshan and Yang Mei couldn't help but curse inwardly. First, they had lost their connection to the Pan-Gu Chaos world. Then, the wormhole had been destroyed, and they had almost been buried together. Now, an unknown danger had appeared. When it rains, it pours. When the boat is late, it is hit by the first wind. Although he was cursing inwardly, on the surface, Fang Qingshan could only get the Thunder Emperor to activate the Eternal Lightning Pool at full power, agitate the sails, and support the Permitha Bridge in an attempt to fly away as fast as possible and escape from danger. Unfortunately, although they were fast, they couldn't completely avoid the wormhole explosion. Now, they couldn't completely shake off the danger approaching them. An incomparably huge void behemoth that was even larger than Yang Mei's true form, Hollow Willow Tree, and the eternal heavenly vessel appeared. It chased after Fang Qingshan and the timeless arc at lightning speed. Desolation had ferocious beasts, the primordial chaos had ferocious beasts, and the immeasurable void naturally had many ferocious beasts. Although most of these ferocious beasts weren't intelligent, they were truly talented. Even a large race like the Void Dragon race might not be able to gain an advantage in a head-on clash with them. They might even be at a disadvantage. The strength of these ferocious beasts was related to their size. The larger their size, the stronger they were. Of course, it didn't eliminate the possibility of cultivating with spiritual wisdom and being able to control the size of the ferocious beasts. That was another matter. The ferocious beast in front of them clearly hadn't developed spiritual wisdom. However, in terms of size, It was not inferior to Yang Mei because it was brimming with an aura of survival of the fittest. In the world of martial arts, there was nothing it couldn't overcome except speed. If these ferocious beasts didn't act according to their instincts, they would simply be nightmarish existences with their naturally large size, tyrannical strength, and speed. This was also one of the sources of danger in the immeasurable void. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.